Chapter 2196. While they were talking, they had already arrived in front of Falling Flower Villa. The magnificent rose terrace was in front of them. It was almost fully formed. Tan Tan winked. Just wait to lose. It's you who will definitely lose. Yao Ningning snorted. Her face was full of unwillingness and indignation. Tan Tan burst into loud laughter. I've never lost. So I'm sure that I'll win this bet. The Tang clan's third young master couldn't help but be curious. Especially when the word bet was mentioned, it made his heart itch even more. I wonder what the two of you are betting on. It's so interesting. Can I be a part of this? The two of them looked back at this guy at the same time. There was actually someone who rushed to gamble. Not bad, not bad. This big brother Tan said that brother Chu is a divine master in the field of love. His attainments have already reached the pinnacle of perfection. He can do whatever he wants. He can do it at his fingertips. So, he can become bosom friends with Miss Z as long as he sees her. Then, he can enter her room. In fact, he can even throw himself into her arms. Yao Ningning's face was full of disdain. She looked at Tan Tan with a disdainful expression for the first time. It was as if she was daydreaming. What? I also don't believe it. The Tang clan's third young master was stunned. Then, he said decisively, I only said a few words to that great aunt. I just chatted with her a little. It can't even be considered as flirting. But it almost ruined my life. How can it be so easy? It's impossible. I support Brother Yao. I also don't believe it. So, I will also join in the bet. Tang Yangwei was proud. What are you betting on? Purple cloud coins or heavenly treasures? Purple cloud coins? Heavenly treasures? What's the point of betting on such low-level things? What we are betting on is obedience. Whoever loses will have to listen to the other. Yao Ningning hadn't spoken yet. Tan Tan spoke first. And you have to call me a pig in public. The Tang clan's third young master frowned and looked at Tan Tan for a moment. Then he sighed. Brother Tan, I will be honest with you. If you lose, it will be too unfair for a pig. Tan Tan flew into a rage upon hearing this. Yao Ningning, on the other hand, almost burst into laughter because of these words. While the three of them were making a ruckus, Chu Yang said in a low voice, Quiet. The three of them instantly fell silent. Ever since Chu Yang had arrived here, he had seen the three words Falling Flowers Villa at first glance. And he had felt somewhat restless. Falling Flower Yard. Miss Z? Could it be her? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he was actually unable to suppress his longing any longer. The various matters of the past gradually appeared before his eyes, and they didn't stop for a long time. For a moment, Chu Yang felt that his mouth and tongue were dry, and his heart was beating more and more violently. The attendants of the Tang clan's third young master had already finished the flower rack while Tan Tan and the other two were talking. And the big words on it had already taken shape. However, Tang Yangwei had already lost his interest in pursuing the beauty. He already had a better solution to his problem. This woman was an existence that he could not afford to offend, so how could he dare to provoke her? Not to mention himself, even the entire clan behind him didn't have enough weight in front of him, so, this time, the flower rack had become a veritable decoration. Hey, you go and invite Miss Z, Yao Ningning said to the Tang clan's third young master with his heart beating like a drum. Why should it be me? Tang Yangwei took 3 steps back. His bamboo-like body trembled, and his face flushed red. Haven't you been pursuing Miss Z for several years? You should be the one to go. Yao Ningning shook his head like a rattledrum. No, I can't. Both of you go together. Chu Yang couldn't help but shout when he saw that the two of them had actually lost the chain at this time. Hearing this, the two of them immediately lowered their heads. Yao Ningning didn't dare to refute. Tang Yangwei needed Chu Yang to treat his illness, so he didn't dare to disobey him even more. The two of them walked to the door, puffing and puffing. They looked at each other and then called out, Miss Z, Yao Ningning, Tang Yangwei, requests to see you. Their voices were very, very soft, like the hum of a mosquito. The two of them thought that there would definitely be no response this time. If there was a response, then there would be a ghost. But they didn't expect that there would really be a ghost in the clear sky. The two of them had just finished speaking when they heard a cold voice from inside. Who else came with the two of you? Moreover, one could faintly discern that this clear and cold voice was actually mixed with an indescribable sense of urgency. Or perhaps, it could be said that it was a type of unsure desire and fear that her dream would be shattered. However, the moment this voice appeared, Chu Yang's face changed at once. His fair face instantly turned red, as if all the blood in his body had rushed to the top of his head. How could he not be familiar with this voice? It had long left such a deep mark in his soul, a mark that could never be erased. Zi Xieching. It's really her. Without waiting for Yao Ningning and Tang Yangwei to reply, Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, "It's me." Yao Ningning and Tang Yangwei rolled their eyes at the same time. How could he be a master of love? How could he have the cheek to say such a simple opening? "It's you?" How would she know who you are? But in the next moment, something extremely unimaginable and unbelievable happened. It happened right in front of the two idiots. Boom! The gate of Luohua Courtyard, which had been closed all year round, suddenly opened without any warning. The two sides of the gate separated and bounced back after hitting the wall. While bouncing back, the gate was still drifting back and forth with a whoosh. Oh my gosh! Wasn't this reaction a little too intense? Yao Ningning and Tang Yangwei's eyebrows twitched wildly, and their necks were also very long. Their faces were full of astonishment and disbelief. The door of the courtyard opened, and inside was a quiet and secluded path. At its widest part, it could only allow two people to walk side by side. There were flowers of all colors on both sides, and petals constantly fell from the trees on both sides, landing on the flower path, forming a flower path that was filled with a strong fragrance. A white figure appeared in a flash, and at the end of the path, it was as if a graceful figure had appeared out of thin air. Black hair like clouds, white clothes whiter than snow, indescribably magnificent, and inexhaustible beauty. At this moment, that peerless beauty was looking up at the crowd, but her eyes seemed to be searching for something, faintly revealing eagerness and anxiety. Chu Yang deeply gazed at her. Their gazes met, and both of them trembled a little. Although these two people didn't open their mouths to speak, but invisibly thousands of words were contained in the meeting of their gazes. You finally came. I'd been waiting for you for a long time. You're really here. I'd been looking for you for a long time. Then, that white-clothed figure drifted out like a gust of wind. Chu Yang restrained the churning emotions in his heart, and took a step forward, and said with a smile, "It's really you! It's really you!" That white figure didn't answer, and only rushed over as if she was flying. Tan Tan looked on from the side, and was tongue-tied. He was dumbstruck, and his eyebrows were raised in exultation. She's coming! She's coming! She's throwing herself into my arms!" Yao Ningning and Tang Yangwei's 4 eyeballs had already popped out, and were about to pop out of their eye sockets. Is Big Brother's charm really so terrifying? Can he really make a beauty throw herself into his arms? I've seen her the moment I came. Moreover, she's flying out to greet me. Moreover, looking at this posture, she's definitely going to rush into my arms. She's throwing herself into my arms, so entering my room is naturally not a problem. But this doesn't make sense, right? Under the gazes of the three of them, under Chu Yang's agitated welcome with open arms, Zi Xieching rushed over like a whirlwind, and then scolded loudly. "You bastard!" Then, she punched Chu Yang's lower abdomen fiercely and accurately. Ouch! Poor Minister Chu was just fantasizing about the beauty throwing herself into his arms, and the romantic scene of him being filled with soft, warm, and fragrant jade. It's a good thing that he was about to enter the room later, but who would have thought that he would actually receive such a fierce and sharp punch? It was a move on the spot. It was a move without any tricks at all. His entire body immediately bent into the shape of a prawn. His back suddenly swelled up, his head stretched forward, his hands stretched forward, and his legs stretched forward. But his entire body was like a cannonball that was shot out of the barrel, flying backwards at an extremely fast speed. With a swoosh, he had already flown to God knows where. "You damned bastard, you still dare to come?" Zixieqing's eyes were still red, and she muttered angrily. "Goddamned bastard! Heartless man! You actually took so long to come. Obviously, you don't care about me at all." Yao Ningning and Tang Yangwei quietly retracted their necks. "Oh my God! She's really too fierce. Luckily, we didn't catch up to her. If she did, my future days." The two of them looked at each other at the same time, and both saw the deep fear in the depths of each other's eyes. They were really too lucky. At the side, Tan Tan was also dumbfounded. Just now, when he saw Chu Yang being attacked, he subconsciously wanted to help him. But after listening to the woman's words, he suddenly understood. This woman is actually a sister-in-law? But what's going on? Since she's a sister-in-law, why did they fight so fiercely the moment they met? And so fiercely too. If she's a sister-in-law, she should have thrown herself into his arms, and then the two of them would enter the room together. Why did it turn out like this? This doesn't make sense? Wait, doesn't that mean that I've lost the bet? Oh my God! You've lost! The truth is very obvious, you've lost! Yao Ningning and Tang Yangwei immediately turned to look at Tan Tan. The two of them pointed their fingers at him and gave a conclusion. Although this guy was ugly, at least he didn't feel as dangerous as when they stared at the beautiful woman in front of them. I've lost? It hasn't reached the point where the winner and loser are decided yet. Tan Tan argued irrationally. Maybe she'll throw herself into his arms later. Right now, they're just flirting. A figure flashed, and Zixieqing floated over. Her expression was very unfriendly. What are you guys talking about? What throwing herself into his arms and flirting? Nothing, just a private conversation. The three of them laughed dryly and hurriedly tried to cover it up. Speak! Zixieqing shouted, and her power was immediately apparent. Tianji might not be able to make up for it. Cousin came to my place and dragged me to drink. Dan, we've finally met, haven't we? So it can't be considered as keeping me in suspense. Chapter 2197. The three of them, even the undisciplined and out-of-control Tan Tan, shivered and withered. What exactly happened? Tell me clearly! Zixieqing's face was full of anger. This. Under the threat of the beauty, the first to surrender was undoubtedly His Highness Yao Ningning. Once Zixieqing got angry, even Yao Ningning's liver was trembling and his guts were about to explode. Under such circumstances, if he betrayed his brother, then so be it. He would rather die than die. Sigh, it has really become a conditioned reflex. You can't blame me for this. Therefore, he narrated the entire story in detail, no matter how big or small it was. Well, they are also kind-hearted. They came to help me pick up girls. No, they came to that. Yao Ningning's words were incoherent, and her eyes were rolling. Isn't there a saying, 3 good men help, this, that? Before I came, I even made a bet with him, this, that, what's going on? Yao Ningning's heart trembled and his guts were about to burst. Under Zixieqing's sharp gaze, which seemed to want to kill him, he stammered and spilled everything. The more Zixieqing listened, the uglier her face became. More and more dark clouds shrouded the sky. It looked like thunder and lightning were about to flash, and thunderbolts were about to strike. The three of them felt their legs cramping. They wanted to leave but didn't dare to. Even if they could run, they didn't dare to. Even if a monk could run, could the temple run away? Wow! Zixieqing gritted her teeth. The few of you actually dared to use me to make a bet. We don't dare! We don't dare! The three of them shook their heads and laughed dryly. With a swoosh, Chu Yang flew back. His face was pale as he said, Big Sister Z, please forgive me. It's because my cultivation isn't high enough. There's nothing I can do about it. Zixieqing's expression was cold, and she said angrily, Whether your cultivation is high enough or not is another matter. But when you came here, you actually wanted to make a bet with others. You actually used me as a bet and helped others pick up girls. You're really something. Why didn't I see that you're so amazing in the past? I've really misjudged you. Chu Yang was dumbstruck when he heard this. He opened his eyes and looked at Yao Ningning, Tan Tan, and Tang Yanwei. He had never thought that he would be betrayed by these three people in such a short period of time after he had been sent flying by a punch. Wasn't this a little too fast? Things were developing too quickly. How could they be cleaned up? Save me. Cough, cough. You've heard me tell you that they were the only ones gambling. I had nothing to do with it. Really? Chu Yang explained weakly. Big Sister Z, you have to be impartial. You have to believe in my character. You have to stand up for me. You're clearly the one who forced us to gamble. The three of them shouted together. Now that the three of them had recognized the situation, they naturally wanted to disassociate themselves from the matter. The three of them were outsiders, so the two of them could argue among themselves. Do you still have any morals? Do you even believe your own words? Xi Xiecheng sneered, her face flushed red. If this fellow made such a bet with them, wouldn't it mean that he was confident in himself? Humph, he actually made a bet with others that I would throw myself into his arms. And that, when Xi Xiecheng thought of this, she instantly felt that the gentleness in her heart had turned into embarrassment and anger. She couldn't control herself anymore. This bastard, what kind of person does he think I am? He's really itching for a beating. I'll believe you. Xi Xiecheng gritted her teeth and blushed. Come over, I'm willing to believe you this time. Come over, come over. Why aren't you coming over? Chu Yang turned around and was about to run away. He shouted, Big Sister, this is really a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding your head. Stop right there. Xi Xiecheng shouted and flew up. The astonishing speed of a saint was fully displayed. She kicked Chu Yang to the ground in midair. Then, her fists were like meteors and her legs were like torrential rain, pouring down on Chu Yang's body. Spare my life. Ow. 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 Chu Yang held his head and begged for mercy. Xi Xiecheng turned a deaf ear to his begging. She punched him again and again like a storm. She muttered, I'll let you make a bet. Make a bet. Make another bet. Bet, bet, bet. Chu Yang's body was smashed into the ground by Xi Xiecheng at a speed visible to the naked eye. Tan Tan and the other two watched from the side until their lips turned green and their faces turned pale. They were trembling all over. They were scared out of their wits. Especially Yao Ningning and Tang Yanwei, their calves were already cramping. Ugh, too savage, too savage, too savage. Sure enough, you can't judge a book by its cover. Who would have thought that this dainty and beautiful girl was actually such a violent woman? We are so lucky, so lucky, so lucky. Tan Tan was also shocked in his heart. When did senior brother pick up such a fierce sister-in-law? This is too frightening. Senior brother's taste is indeed very heavy. After a long while, Xi Xiecheng pulled Chu Yang out of the ground. She said fiercely, Are you betting that I will throw myself at you? Do you still want to enter the room? However, because there was still a piece of soil in his mouth, his words were unclear, and it was difficult for him to express his meaning. I'll fulfill your wish today and throw myself into your arms. Xi Xiecheng kicked Chu Yang. With a swoosh, Chu Yang turned into a shooting star in the sky and left everyone's sight once again. The three of them were sweating profusely as they watched, not daring to make the slightest movement. Wasn't this sister-in-law a little too fierce? It's a pity that Teacher Cat isn't here. Otherwise, he would be filled with regret. It turns out that I'm not the only unfortunate man in this world. There are actually people who are even more miserable than me. Brother Chu, I don't mind you laughing at me in the past. Do you really think that you can bully me just because your cultivation has increased? Naive! Childish! Xi Xiecheng raised her nose and smiled. Between her smile and frown, she was actually very elegant and charming. Then, she said in a gentle voice, The three of you are guests from afar, and also his friends. please come in and have a seat. I'll serve you a cup of tea. We don't dare. Tan Tan and the other two turned pale and shook their heads in unison. They really wanted to say that they weren't familiar with that person, but they were too embarrassed to say it out loud. Are you coming in or not? Xi Xieching's expression changed instantly, and she shouted. Let's go in and drink tea. The three of them shuddered at the same time and walked into Falling Flower's cottage carefully and fearfully. In the face of Xi Xieching's warm invitation and cordial greeting, the three of them felt that they had walked into the mouth of a tigress. Who can save us and escape from the tiger's mouth? Yao Ningning and the Tang clan's third young master, who once had endless fanciful thoughts about Xi Xieching, no longer had any fanciful thoughts at this moment. How would they dare to? Pray to God, please don't let this woman remember that they had feelings for her. Other than that, their only thought was, how can we get out of here unscathed? Once they thought of this question, they simply couldn't help but cry. Because, was it possible? Impossible, right? How could it be possible? You are Yao Ningning, you are that Tang Yangwei, and this is? Xi Xieching looked at Tan Tan and frowned. Tan Tan said with fear and trepidation, I am Tan Tan, I am. Xi Xieching was suddenly enlightened. Oh, I know who you are. You are that junior brother of Chu Yang, right? Tan Tan was energized and said, Yes, senior sister-in-law's eyes are as sharp as torches. Do you think I am handsome? As he said that, he still pretended to flick his hair elegantly. Although he was scared and terrified, at such a critical moment, he still couldn't lose his elegance. His confidence was still there. Am I handsome? The corners of Xi Xieching's mouth twitched very clearly. After a long while, she laughed dryly and said, Handsome. No wonder Chu Yang often praised you for being handsome. To be honest, I didn't really believe it at first. After all, seeing is believing. It's only when I see you now that I believe that you are indeed very handsome. As the saying goes, seeing you in person is better than hearing about you. You are indeed a dragon and a phoenix. You have a dignified appearance. You look talented, handsome, and elegant. Upon hearing that, Tan Tan was overjoyed and laughed heartily. He was so happy that he danced and said, Senior sister-in-law's eyes are as sharp as torches and you have seen more than others. Are you speaking the truth? You aren't just saying that, right? Xi Xieching swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty and said, How can that be? Every word is true, from the bottom of my heart. After saying that, she reacted and said angrily, That is your senior sister-in-law? Don't talk nonsense. Others don't understand my handsomeness. Only senior sister-in-law knows me, and understands me. What regrets do I have in life to have a confidant? Xi Xieching was sweating profusely and was speechless for a long time. Sigh, only the heavens know how much I've gone against my conscience and morals when I said those words just now. But this little one is Chu Zhao's only junior brother. If I go against my conscience and morals, then so be it. Who told me to get involved? While Tan Tan was extremely surprised and sighed, while Yao Ningning and the Tang clan's third young master were trembling with fear, the three of them finally stepped into the courtyard. There was a pavilion in the middle. There were flower racks around the pavilion and a stone table below. There were a few seats. The seats made of warm jade were clean and spotless. Obviously, the owner had stayed here many times and cleaned it every day. That was why it could be so clean. Take a seat first. I will go make tea and entertain the guests. Xi Xieching smiled faintly. We don't dare. Yao Ningning bowed. The Tang clan's third young master also rolled his eyes. When had the two of them received such a warm reception from Xi Xieching? In that instant, they actually couldn't get used to it. Sit! Xi Xieching's eyes lit up. The two of them instantly sat upright in their seats with a plop sound. They didn't dare to move an inch. Chapter 2198. Seeing this, Xi Xieching smiled. Then, she drifted away to make tea. She only heaved a sigh of relief when she reached her own tea room. Her face turned red and her limbs started to tremble. That foe actually dared to use me as a wager. Bastard! Xi Xiecheng cursed in a low voice. Her face was full of bashful smiles as she muttered. He really deserves a beating. He really deserves a beating. If I don't beat him up for 3 days, he's going to be a troublemaker. She was suddenly stunned. She muttered, why didn't I see through his cultivation just now? Chu Yang is now. What cultivation level is he at? Could it be that I was distracted just now and didn't look carefully? I'm now at the level of a saint. As long as I come into contact with him, I'll be able to see through him. Could it be that I've just reached this level and am distracted? It must be so. She calmed herself down and walked out with the tea set. When she walked out, her face had already regained its previous coldness. At this moment, there was a whistling sound in the air. Chu Yang somersaulted all the way and entered the pavilion. He laughed and said, I went for a spin. I'm back again. Yao Ningning and the other two were stunned. They rolled their eyes. You went for a spin? You were clearly kicked out of the room. Xi Xiecheng walked out slowly with the tea. She glanced at Chu Yang coldly and said, Why? Grand Duke Chu, did you honor your bet? Did you win? Chu Yang rubbed his hands and laughed dryly. I know that you won't believe me if I say that I didn't make a bet. But the problem is that I really didn't. Xi Xiecheng looked at him from the corner of her eyes. If you dare to say this again, I'll make you fly again. Do you think I won't? Chu Yang opened his mouth and laughed dryly. Then, he quickly closed his mouth and didn't dare to say another word. Chu Yang knew very well what kind of person Xi Xiecheng was. Not to mention making him fly again, even if she did it a few more times, it would be normal. Come, everyone, have some tea. Xi Xiecheng picked up the teacup and spoke to a certain lady first. This? Yao Ningning, I already have someone in my heart. I really can't promise you. I'm sorry. Yao Ningning felt extremely flattered. She hurriedly stood up and said incoherently, It's fine. Fortunately, you didn't agree. Cough, cough. What I meant was, it's great that you didn't agree. That's not what I meant. What I actually meant was, if you had agreed, how unlucky would I be? The more Yao Ningning spoke, the more she felt that she was too retarded. How could she say all the truth in her heart? Speaking up to this point, she was tongue-tied and could not continue. She raised her hand in annoyance and slapped herself in the face. What nonsense are you talking about? Calling you an idiot is simply too accurate. Everyone looked at each other and tried their best to resist the urge to laugh. However, he still felt like his heart was about to explode. If you promise me, how unlucky I will be, I really don't know how Yao Ningning came up with such a talented sentence. Xi Xiecheng's face had already turned the color of the bottom of a pot. She looked at Yao Ningning fiercely. Is this what you think in your heart? Yao Ningning was sweating profusely. She was at a loss and almost lost consciousness. I'm wrong, scram! Xi Xiecheng pointed at the door angrily. She was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down. How unlucky would I be if I had agreed? Am I really that unwelcomed? Then why did you, this bastard, pursue me for so long? Do you have nothing better to do? I originally wanted to use you to anger a certain someone. Now that I didn't anger him, I almost angered myself to death. Yao Ningning walked out in a daze. It wasn't until his figure walked out of Falling Blossom Yard that everyone heard the sound of slapping, mixed with Yao Ningning's regretful voice. Why is that mouth of his so despicable? Even if it's the truth, you can't say it in front of him. This stupid mouth. Pfft. Ha ha. Tan Tan couldn't hold it in anymore. The mouthful of tea that he had just drunk suddenly sprayed out. He opened his mouth and laughed loudly. But just as he turned his head, he suddenly met Xi Xiecheng's cold eyes. Before he could laugh out loud, his laughter was frozen. He coughed awkwardly until his face and ears turned red. His breathing became erratic. Tan Tan, right? Is it very funny? Xi Xiecheng asked very gently. It's not funny, not funny. It's not funny at all. Tan Tan was flustered and looked extremely embarrassed. Then why are you laughing? I see that you're laughing very happily. Xi Xiecheng's eyes turned sharp and cold again, full of awe-inspiring intent. This time, he couldn't care less that Xi Xiecheng was in front of him. He slapped the stone table and laughed hysterically. This bastard told the truth. Why did he tell the truth? Wahahaha. Xi Xiecheng took a deep breath. Get lost. You get lost too. Quickly get lost. After saying that, she didn't wait for Tan Tan's reaction. She reached out and grabbed Tan Tan's collar. With a swoosh, she threw him out. Only a loud sound was heard. And Tan Tan had already been thrown to an unknown place. Only a scream was left in the air. A human-shaped shooting star appeared in the sky again. What about you? Xi Xiecheng looked at Tang Yongwei. Is it funny? Third young master Tang sat upright with a serious expression. It's not funny. How is it funny? These two fellows are really too wretched. They're really stupid. I can't watch it anymore. I can't even listen to it. Miss C is so fairy-like and peerless. These two simply don't know how to appreciate beauty. Really? Are you speaking from your heart? Xi Xiecheng's eyes suddenly became deep and serene as she stared at Tang Yongwei. Third young master Tang suddenly felt that his spirit had sunk into a bottomless whirlpool. In an instant he was in a daze. Just when he was at his most confused, he heard someone ask gently, What are you thinking about? Tell me your true thoughts, okay? That voice was like one's closest friend, an absolutely trustworthy friend asking him a question. He couldn't help but want to say everything he knew. My true thoughts? Third young master Tang repeated this in a daze. Then, the corners of his mouth rose into an unconcealable smile. Suddenly, he burst out laughing. Wahahaha! That fool really made me laugh to death. He actually spoke the truth in every sentence. How can he speak the truth to a woman? Even if you're glad that she didn't fancy us, you should still act a little regretful. But now it's great. Ha! So satisfying. To be honest, who would want such a fierce woman? That's because I'm lucky that she didn't fancy me. Otherwise, how am I going to live in the future? Even the heavens pity me. I'm really too lucky. Ha 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 ha. So happy. Ha! Third young master Tang laughed heartily from the bottom of his heart. Once he started laughing, he couldn't stop. Then, he suddenly came back to reality. He opened his mouth and laughed loudly. However, his eyes suddenly saw Xi Xiecheng's almost distorted face. His laughter stopped abruptly. He stared straight and laughed dryly. Ha! What I said just now was all sleep talk. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Get lost! You get lost too! Xi Xiecheng was so angry that she was about to break down. She directly kicked him. Third young master Tang screamed and his whole body flew out. After floating for a long time, he finally landed on the ground with a plop. Lying on the ground like a toad, he straightened his neck and looked around. My mother, ah! I've actually returned to Tang Manor, ah! And after being kicked so far away, I'm actually not injured at all. This is really a miracle. The Tang clan's third young master wiped away his sweat with lingering fear. He felt that his legs had gone soft. He stood up and calmed himself down. Suddenly he muttered to himself, I have to go to the Luo Huan to recruit people to fulfill that bet. It's also a happy thing to be able to see that ugly guy make a fool of himself. And divine Dr. Chu that. He patted his butt and actually walked towards Luo Huan while humming a tune. The guards at the entrance of the Tang residence all stared with their eyes wide open. What's wrong with our third young master? He fell from the sky in such a sorry state just now, stretched his neck and stayed in a daze for a long time. Why is he patting his butt and walking out as if nothing happened? What does this mean? Is he crazy? At this moment, there was only one woman and one man left in the Luo Huan, Xi Xiecheng and Chu Yang. The two of them faced each other silently for a long time. You finally got rid of all the people who shouldn't be here? Chu Yang smiled and poured himself a cup of tea. He held it up and laughed softly. Since you've already decided to let them go, why did you let them in? Xi Xiecheng said coldly. Nonsense. Do you think you know what I'm thinking? I'm willing to invite them in first, and then chase them out. What can you do about that? Who do you think you are? Chu Yang and Xi Xiecheng's voices seemed very calm. However, both of them could clearly feel the fiery emotions hidden under the other's calm voice. At this moment, they were almost unable to control themselves. But the atmosphere froze at this moment. Chu Yang drank his tea slowly. Xi Xiecheng also held up her teacup and drank her tea. Both of their faces were equally calm, but both of them felt a little uneasy. Two people who could entrust their lives to each other, and made a solemn vow of love to each other. Two people who had a promise that they would never regret. After years of separation, they finally met again. But both of them returned to silence, and couldn't say a word. Both of them had 1,000 words in their hearts that they wanted to say to each other, but they couldn't say a single word. No, it wasn't that they couldn't say anything. But everyone was thinking which sentence would be the most suitable to use as an opening remark. After thinking for a long time, there was actually no sentence that was suitable for the current mood and the current environment. They actually remained silent all the way. Only Chu Yang coughed softly every once in a while. He wanted to say something but stopped. Then, he lowered his head and started drinking his tea again. Slowly, he drank until his stomach was bulging. But he still couldn't decide what to say. Opposite him, Xi Xiecheng sat quietly like a beautiful statue. Chapter 2199. Longing for each other, the extreme care they had for each other, the sudden surprise. Countless complex emotions intertwined together, but they were actually speechless. For a moment, both of their hearts were thumping wildly. If it was an ordinary person, they would have screamed in joy and hugged each other to vent their emotions. But both of them were extremely restrained people. Also, before they parted, although they knew that they had feelings for each other, they had not broken through that layer of window paper. After a long period of time passed, the stalemate continued for a long time. Originally, a certain king of hell finally remembered that he was a man after all, and a man should always take the initiative in this aspect. But just as he raised his head and was about to speak, he saw Xi Xiecheng's cold face. Thinking of how this girl had used this face to teach him a lesson back then, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. He swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth, and it turned into a series of coughs. Why are you coughing? Are you sick? Xi Xiecheng's anger, which had already subsided a little, could not help but intensify again. Look at this guy. Since we met, other than getting beaten up, he only drank tea and coughed like he had tuberculosis. Can you come up with something else? You're a man, why can't you take responsibility? Do you want me, a little girl, to speak first to break the stalemate? I'm a little, hee. Chu Yang laughed dryly and did not know what to say for a moment. His usual quick-wittedness was nowhere to be found. If you really don't have anything else to say, I'll go and rest. Although we're old friends, now that we've met and received each other, the etiquette is complete. I don't have so much free time to sit around with you. Xi Xiecheng pretended to get up. Don't, please don't. Chu Yang hurriedly stopped her, scratching his ears and cheeks. Looking at the face in front of him, which he had been dreaming of, he finally mustered up his courage. I have something to say. Do you have anything else to say? Go ahead, I'm listening. Xi Xiecheng's face blushed inexplicably. At this moment, there was actually a hint of shyness. This dumb bird finally has something to say? I have something to say. Chu Yang scratched his head and racked his brains. What is your cultivation level now? You've been humming and hawing for so long just to tell me this? For a moment, Xi Xiecheng glared at this dumb bird. Anger rose in her heart, and she was ready to punch him. She said coldly, Is this what you want to ask? How considerate! If you want to know my current cultivation level, it's very simple. You can try it yourself and you'll know. Asterisk cough. What I meant was. I didn't mean that, this. Chu Yang realized that he had said something wrong again and hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. What I meant was, your cultivation is progressing so fast. You're really too powerful? With a flattering look on his face, Zhong Yu gave a thumbs up, not bothering to hide his flattery. He was just short of wagging his tail. My progress is fast? Are you mocking me for my slow progress? Not as fast as yours, right? Zi Xiecheng was not moved at all. When I left you back then, I was at least 10 levels higher than you. Now I can't see through you anymore. My progress is really too slow, isn't it? It's important to know one's own limits. I still have this self-awareness. I don't need you to remind me. No, 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 no. Chu Yan waved his hands repeatedly. I didn't mean that. I really didn't mean that. You can have it. You obviously meant that. I've already said it out in the open. Why are you still saying that you don't mean that? You really can have it, I don't mind. Although Zi Xiecheng said that she didn't mind, she was getting more and more irritated. Her tone was even more unreasonable. Her aura was on the verge of exploding. Chu Yang said, feeling wronged. How can you be like this? When we were in the Heaven continent, I was treated as a punching bag by you every day. What did I say? I didn't say anything at all. Zi Xiecheng's eyes became dangerous. What else do you want to say? I understand. You mean that when I taught you a lesson back then, you couldn't resist and could only shut up. Now that you have the ability, you want to take revenge? You also want to treat me as a punching bag? You want me to shut up too? Sure. Chu Yang was dumbfounded and speechless. He suddenly realized that he was too stupid to argue and reason with a woman. He was so stupid that there was no cure for him. Sigh. You don't know. Ever since you left that day, for such a long time, I really miss you. Chu Yang said softly. Zi Xiecheng's cold face finally showed signs of melting. However, she still kept a straight face and didn't say a word. Obviously, she was waiting for Chu Yang to speak. Back then, during the Battle of Slaying Tao, Chu Yang raised his head. His face was full of deep memories. Suddenly, he let out a long sigh. That year, that day, I still can't forget it. I'll never forget it in this life. Hearing that, Zi Xiecheng let out a soft sigh inadvertently. Suddenly, she remembered that before the Battle of Slaying Tao, it was in the courtyard of the Orchard Palace. It was also under the flower rack like this. When Chu Yang knew that she was going to leave, he found a way to give her things. Heavy Pill, Holy Spirit Spring, Heaven Nourishing Jade, and Hong Meng Purple Vapor, Origin of Heaven and Earth, and many, many other good things. It was also because Chu Yang gave her so many good things that she had the courage and confidence to transform into a human after returning to the Imperial Palace. Because she knew that she had Chu Yang's support behind her. Her future was limitless, and she could look forward to the great Tao. When she was injured and met with a bottleneck, she had the super heavy pill. When she was usually tired, she had the Holy Spirit Spring to improve her physique, cleanse her meridians, and strengthen her vitality. Even if she was faced with a situation where there was no chance of survival, she had the Heaven Nourishing Jade to bring her back to life. With these things as her foundation, what risk did she not dare to take? Moreover, she also had the natural energy of heaven and earth. Suddenly, she remembered that day when Chu Yang said to her, "Big Sister Z, can I hug you?" Her face burned inexplicably. She recalled the warmth she felt in his arms back then. Zi Xiecheng's eyes gradually softened. She looked at Chu Yang with sparkling eyes. Although she had dreamt of the scene of them meeting each other thousands of times, and every night, she would be filled with emotions. But this time, they met in real life. "You seem to have changed a lot." Zi Xiecheng's voice was gentle, but there was an inexplicable heartache in it. Taking a closer look, Chu Yang's face indeed looked like it had been through a lot of hardships. When he was in the upper three heavens, he was still a little immature even though he was young and mature. However, that trace of immaturity in the past had completely disappeared now. Although he was still young, he was still in high spirits and had an elegant demeanor. However, his intangible temperament had lost some of his domineering vibe, and had gained some steadiness and experience. I'm old. Chu Yang was smart. He immediately took advantage of the situation. He sighed as if he was sad. I haven't seen you for such a long time. Although I'm still young, my heart has already aged. I've missed you day and night, so much so that my hair has turned white and my face has changed. I just said a serious sentence, and you're already talking nonsense. Xi Xiecheng's eyes moved. She finally couldn't help but laugh. With this laugh, hundreds of flowers bloomed and the room was filled with beauty. The originally gloomy atmosphere was completely broken and dissipated. Chu Yang's rigid train of thought immediately spread out like a blossoming flower in spring. He beamed with joy and said, Big Sister Z, did you miss me during this period of time? If you say that you didn't, I'll be sad. Xi Xiecheng snorted and said, Pooh, I don't think anyone will miss you. You don't have any weight in my heart. Chu Zhang blinked and suddenly recited in a low voice, The wind blows fast, and the clouds are high in the sky. The moment the first sentence came out, Xi Xiecheng's face turned into the color of pig liver. She stared at him fiercely with shame and anger. Anyone would be angry when a girl's thoughts were exposed, not to mention Xi Xiecheng, who had a fiery temper. Chu Yang laughed cheekily. Traveling alone to the ends of the world, if we meet again in the clouds. Without another word, Xi Xiecheng had already flown up and was about to beat him up with a red face. Chu Yang dodged and said with a cheeky face, Please sweep away the fallen flowers in Jiangnan. Xi Xiecheng stomped her feet. You! Chu Yang replied loudly. Here! Big sister, what do you want me to do? Please tell me. Xi Xiecheng snorted and walked back angrily. She sat down heavily and her pretty face was tense. Chu Yang came up to her recklessly. Big sister Z, I want to ask you something. What is it? Xi Xiecheng gritted her teeth and her face was red. She resisted the urge to teach someone a lesson again. The last two lines of this poem, if we meet again in the clouds, please sweep the fallen flowers in Jiangnan. I don't quite understand the meaning. Please give me some pointers and explain. Chu Yang smiled cheekily. If you don't understand, then don't think about it. Explain your dead head. Xi Xiecheng's face was red as she knocked hard on Chu Yang's head. This time, Chu Yang didn't dodge. He straightened his neck and took it. If you want to enjoy the benefits, it's okay to suffer a little first. This is a necessary investment. You have to give up something to gain something. You have to give something to get something in return. I want to know, please explain. Chu Zhang pursued relentlessly. He acted like a spoiled child and was very tired of it. Get lost! Xi Xiecheng scolded. Chu Yang wasn't afraid at all. He continued to smile cheekily and said, Big sister, come and hug me, get lost! Xi Xiecheng stomped her feet and hid to one side. She said angrily, You let her get lost! I won't! Chu Yang stretched out his limbs shamelessly and was lying on the stone platform. Suddenly, as if he had discovered a new continent, he said, Wow! I just realized why this place looks so familiar. Why does it look like the Orchard Palace in the upper three heavens? It really looks like. Xi Xiecheng gritted her teeth and said, You dare to say another word? Since Big Sister has spoken, I won't say another word. Chu Yang raised his hand. Okay. I'll ask Big Sister Z a question. Okay, I'll be honest. Everyone is suspicious of Big Sister Z's loud shout. I'll let you gamble. Actually, there's a source of income for this. Damn it, that day, a certain B*TCH who lost money called me and my wife heard it. Then, the phone was taken away. Then, I'm completely miserable. Chapter 2200. What is it? Xi Xiecheng could feel her heartbeat alternating between fast and slow, as if she was both fearful and expectant. Big sister, do you miss the days when we were together in Heaven Continent? Is it because of that this place has become like this? You must be missing me. Before Chu Yang could finish his sentence, he was chased by Zi Xiecheng with a red face. For a moment, sword energy was everywhere, but there was no murderous intent. Chu Yang laughed and ran in front, while Zi Xiecheng gritted her teeth and chased after him. In this long-lost atmosphere of being chased, both of their hearts were filled with the warmth of memories. Minister Chu was extremely proud. I did the right thing. For a woman like Big Sister Z, I definitely can't use the same method to deal with Butian and Qian Qian. This girl is too strong. I must do this to be effective. As expected. I guessed correctly. It seems that I am indeed the kind of genius that Tan Tan said. Now that I am trying my best, when have I ever failed? Waha. Just when a certain someone was complacent and indulging in his fantasy, he was already kicked to the ground by Zi Xiecheng and was bitten by a dog in a sorry state. Zi Xiecheng stepped on his back and shouted in an awe-inspiring and murderous manner. You little bastard, do you still dare to tease me? I won't, I really won't. Chu Yang hurriedly begged for mercy. How could he not lower his head in front of Zi Xiecheng? It was as if Zi Xiecheng had suddenly regained the pleasure of torturing Chu Yang wantonly in Tianji City. She couldn't help but feel high-spirited, as if time had suddenly turned back. She shouted again. Say, are you convinced? Chu Yang clapped his hands on the ground. I admit defeat, I admit defeat. Zi Xiecheng was startled. This guy, when he was tortured so badly, he still gritted his teeth and said, Again? What's wrong with him today? Why did he admit defeat when I stepped on him? Zi Xiecheng was full of doubts. She subconsciously let go of her foot and Chu Yang somersaulted up. Both of them smiled at each other, and then suddenly asked in unison, What is your cultivation now? Why can't I see through you? They spoke together, opened and closed their mouths, and then smiled at each other again. I'm now a beginner saint, Zi Xiecheng said calmly. I just broke through yesterday. As she spoke, she looked at Chu Yang with her bright eyes. She was waiting to see the shocked expression on this guy's face, as well as the dejected expression on his face as the gap between them grew wider and wider. In Zi Xiecheng's opinion, it was only natural that Chu Yang couldn't see through her current cultivation level. As for why he couldn't see through Chu Yang's cultivation, it was either because he had just made a breakthrough and had yet to fully adapt to the strength of a saint, or because Chu Yang had used some kind of method. Anyway, as the master of the Calamity Sword, this guy must have a lot of trump cards. Chu Yang was indeed shocked when he heard this. He made a dumbfounded expression and said, Saint? Saint, primary level? Oh my God! Oh my God! How can you improve so quickly? This is too fast. Although she felt that Chu Yang's expression was a little too exaggerated and seemed a little fake, Zi Xiecheng still felt a heartfelt comfort in her heart. She said calmly, It's nothing. I used to have a stronger foundation. Now that my cultivation level is higher than yours, it's only right. I've made so many more steps than you, should I be inferior to you now? Chu Yang sighed and said, Sigh. What should I do now? Zi Xiecheng became happier and happier. She smiled and said, How about you? What's your cultivation level now? Tell me, let me see your progress. Is it because your progress is too slow that you're embarrassed to say it? It's indeed not worth mentioning, not worth mentioning. Chu Yang sighed and looked disappointed. I'm really embarrassed to say it. I thought that I'm definitely stronger than you now, but I didn't expect that the result would be like this. Sigh, the world is unpredictable. Heavens will make a fool out of me. Zi Xiecheng's heart was even happier. She said, Why? You're embarrassed to say it? Say it quickly. What's your cultivation level now? Say it directly. What's a man like you being so shy? Chu Yang sighed deeply and raised his head to look into Zi Xiecheng's eyes. He said in an extremely helpless tone, I seem to be a beginner saint now. I also broke through yesterday, but I still can't surpass you. It's a pity, ha ha ha. It's okay. With your original foundation, it's already very good that you're able to reach the beginner saint level now. Eh? Xiexing suddenly came back to her senses and widened her eyes. What did you say? Saint? You said that you're already a beginner saint? You just broke through yesterday? Yes. Chu Yang looked innocent. Beginner saint. I'm the same as you. Why can't I surpass you? It's really a pity in life. I thought I'd be more or less done this time. Xiexing was in a daze for a while. Suddenly, she grabbed his wrist and checked with her inner energy. Her expression changed immediately. Her beautiful face suddenly turned red, and her nostrils fiercely snorted out coarse air. This bastard, so he's just making fun of me, she thought of Chu Yang's exaggerated dumbfounded look just now and her smug and complacent look just now. It turned out that she was just a clown in front of this guy. For a moment, Xiexing was simply too ashamed to show her face. Bastard! Xiexing roared. Her pretty face turned red and she panted heavily. Her pretty face actually became even more beautiful. Seeing this, Chu Yang laughed loudly. However, to Xiexing's ears, his laughter at this moment was so hateful. She couldn't help but want to beat someone up violently. Chu Yang said with a smile. Big Sister Z, do you still remember our agreement back then? What bullshit agreement? I don't remember. Xiexing was embarrassed and angry. She threw a tantrum and her aura instantly expanded to the maximum. The agreement that I made with you before you left. Chu Yang's face was serious, but his eyes revealed a trace of sincere passion. At that time, I said that if one day my cultivation is stronger than yours, what reward will you give me? Chu Yang said. Hearing this, Xiexing suddenly remembered. She couldn't help but blush. She said angrily, Do you think that you're already stronger than me now? We're both beginner sages. How can you say that I'm not as good as you? At that time, Xiexing was about to go to the battle of slaying Tao. When Chu Yang asked this question, Xiexing said proudly, All right, if one day your cultivation is stronger than mine, I can promise you anything unconditionally. At that time, Chu Yang's eyes lit up. He said, Anything? Including spanking? I want to return all the spanking you gave me during this period of time. Will you agree? Xiexing remembered that she said at that time, Yes, if you want to return it, of course you can. I said that I'll agree to anything, no matter what it is, no matter how you do it. As long as you're stronger than me. Let me do whatever I want. Chu Yang squinted. Thinking of this, Xiexing's face became even redder. There was also a trace of unconcealable embarrassment and anger. Her plump buttocks also seemed to have a strange feeling, as if they were being gently spanked by someone's palm. In an instant, Xiexing's body actually trembled without any warning. Why, have you remembered? Chu Yang winked. Big Sister Z, you won't go back on your words, right? I remember that you said that I can do whatever I want to you. You'll agree to it, including stripping and spanking, including other things, right? He sighed. Big Sister Z, it's because of this extremely tempting condition of yours that I've been cultivating without any regard for my life. Now that our cultivations are about the same, I think I still have a chance. Xiexing's face was as red as blood, but she said angrily, Of course I'll keep my words, but the prerequisite is that you have to be able to defeat me. Do you think that you've got me just because our cultivations are about the same? Chu Yang squinted his eyes, rubbed his hands and said, This? I still have some confidence in it. Xiexing was furious. What arrogance, then let's fight! Here? It can't be? Chu Yang was shocked. Don't tell me that you want to find another place with good feng shui? Xiexing bit her plump lips slightly. If Big Sister says it's here, then it's here. Take this. Chu Yang threw a punch unexpectedly. Xiexing sneered. She turned her body and floated up like a cloud. Chu Yang, don't blame me for not showing mercy this time. You asked for all of this. Ha ha, I'm the one who wants to take revenge this time. Chu Yang roared excitedly and rushed forward. The two sages of this generation had already activated their respective force fields as soon as they started to fight. They didn't protect themselves, but the entire Luohua villa was tightly protected. Otherwise, Even if they didn't use all of their strength to fight, the overflowing energy alone was enough to completely destroy Luohua Villa. At this moment, no one was even aware that a world-shocking battle between two Saint Realm experts was taking place in this place while it was enveloped by their auras. Although the two of them were not really fighting to the death, Chu Yang wanted to achieve his goal, so he would naturally go all out. On the other hand, Zi Xiecheng would definitely go all out to protect her dignity and dignity. She would definitely go all out too. If there were knowledgeable onlookers present, they would definitely be dazzled by this battle. It was really a brilliant battle. The battle had only lasted for a short while, but Zi Xiecheng was already complaining secretly. Now, Chu Yang's cultivation didn't look like he had just broken through to the sage level. It was obviously much stronger than hers. If she fought with him head-on, she definitely wouldn't be his match. How could this be? Chu Yang had no reason to lie to her. But if they were both sages who had just broken through yesterday, how could there be such a huge gap between them? Moreover, her foundation was originally thousands of times stronger than his. How could this happen now? This was simply inexplicable and incomprehensible. After a few more moves, Zi Xiecheng finally confirmed that she was really no match for Chu Yang now. Now, she was completely at a disadvantage. She could only parry his attacks, but had no strength to fight back. Thinking of the bet between the two of them, Zi Xiecheng was embarrassed and anxious, but there was nothing she could do. Did she really have to ask him to return it? But how could this guy just return it so honestly? He would definitely do whatever he wanted, and use all means to get it back. Recommended a good book, The Unparalleled Demon Master, Chi Path Rotation, Above Rotation is Xuanhuang Heavenly Man Movement, Martial Saint Absolute, Human King Opening Mansion, Earth Venerable Flying Heaven. This was a magical world. A down-and-out young man accidentally obtained a magical purple bone from a corpse floating on the sea, which recorded an ancient soul technique that had long been lost. 3,000 years later, no one knew who was still alive. Chapter 2201. At the thought of this, Zi Xiecheng's mind became even more chaotic. She was gradually losing her strength to contend with Chu Yang. No, I can't admit defeat like this. Even though I don't oppose it. Even though Chu Yang is the one I love, I can't lose my entire being and let him do whatever he wants in this situation where I've been defeated. If that was the case, how could she hold her head up high in the future? The more anxious she was, the more chaotic her mind became. Naturally, her moves became even more messy and weak. Chu Yang, who felt that victory was within his grasp, became even more complacent. He chuckled and said, "Big sister, admit defeat. Hurry up and admit defeat." While Zi Xiecheng was feeling anxious, she suddenly had an idea. Chu Yang smugly punched towards Zi Xiecheng. His target was Zi Xiecheng's upturned nose. According to martial arts common sense, Zi Xiecheng would undoubtedly dodge. But this time, Zi Xiecheng suddenly seemed to be stunned at the subtle moment when Chu Yang's fist was about to hit her face. She froze and didn't move. She actually didn't have any intention of dodging. Chu Yang was shocked when he saw this. According to the strength of both parties, he definitely wouldn't be able to hit Zi Xiecheng. Knowing this, he naturally didn't hold back. But if Zi Xiecheng really couldn't dodge and couldn't match up to him, Chu Yang was very clear about the strength of his punch. If it really hit her face, Zi Xiecheng's nose would definitely be smashed on the spot. Although he had the heavy pill in hand and could cure her immediately, how could he be so careless with such a beauty? Chu Yang hurriedly retracted his hand and tried his best to retract the fist that he had already punched out. Although Chu Yang had already become a saint and his strength was many times stronger than before, he was still just a beginner. He hadn't reached the realm where he could use his strength as he wished. When he made a move, it was more or less difficult for him to retract it. Right now, he had just made a move and had to forcefully retract it. He had to endure more than twice the force of the backlash. This was also because Chu Yang's foundation was deep and far stronger than ordinary beginner saints. But he still had to be flustered and his internal organs churning. But at this moment, Zixieqing struck. Taking advantage of Chu Yang's flustered state of mind, he punched Chu Yang's shoulder. Chu Yang's body staggered, and then he was kicked 7 or 8 times in succession. Flustered, he barely managed to cope with it, and hurriedly somersaulted away. Just as he was about to get angry, he heard Zixieqing say, "There's no need to go easy on me. I was distracted just now. Let's do it again." He had actually taken the initiative to attack. Chu Yang was startled. Distracted? Is this for real? Hurriedly, she gathered her energy and went up against Chu Yang's attack with all her might. Slowly, Zixieqing fell into a disadvantageous position again. Chu Yang regained the upper hand and slapped his palm towards Zixieqing's chest. Zixieqing puffed up her chest and welcomed him without dodging. Seeing this, Chu Yang was stunned. Helpless, he hurriedly retracted his hand. Zixieqing shouted and grabbed his arm that was just about to retract. She swung Chu Yang's body up and smashed him heavily onto the ground. Puff! There was a human-shaped crater on the ground. Chu Yang sprung up and shouted gloomily. "This is not fair," Zixieqing said coldly. "Who asked you to go easy on me?" She jumped up again. This happened more than 10 times in a row. Every time Chu Yang gained the upper hand and Zixieqing was about to lose her strength to fight back, she would do this. Unfortunately, Chu Yang fell for this trick. No matter what, he couldn't bear to really hurt Zixieqing. Therefore, Zixieqing turned the tables time and time again, and he was smashed onto the ground time and time again. Puff, puff, puff. In the last few times, Chu Yang simply stopped attacking Zixieqing's back and buttocks. He thought to himself, "This should be fine, right? Let's quickly end this farce." But he didn't think that every time he was about to succeed, Zixieqing would forcefully turn around and expose her beautiful face to Chu Yang's fists, kicks, fingers, and palms. She didn't even hesitate to lower herself to do this. How would Chu Yang dare to really hurt her face? Of course, he hurriedly retracted his attacks and retreated. However, in that short period of time, Zixieqing had quickly turned from passive to absolute initiative. She completely gained the upper hand and beat Chu Yang up like a sandbag. After a long while, Chu Yang lay weakly in another human-shaped pit on the ground. He refused to get up no matter what. "You're cheating. I quit." Minister Chu was extremely indignant. Who the fuck would fight like this? Wasn't this too much of a bully? She actually used her body as a weapon. How was he supposed to fight like this? Every time he finally gained the upper hand after many twists and turns, and just when he was about to be secretly happy that his wish was about to be fulfilled, Zixieqing would immediately use shameless means to deceive him. It was still fine if it was just deceiving her, but in a battle between experts, a small difference could lead to a huge difference. He had shown mercy and retreated, but Big Sister Z didn't show any mercy at all. Immediately it was his turn to be beaten up badly, and miserable. It was the same every time. The cycle repeated endlessly. How was he supposed to fight like this? No matter how he fought, he would be the one getting beaten up, and he would be the unlucky one. The only way to solve this problem was to stop fighting. Cheating? Who's cheating? Zixieqing snorted and said nonchalantly. In a battle between two parties, victory and defeat is decided in an instant. The winner is king, and the loser is disaster. Who asked you to stop? Just do whatever you want. I didn't ask you to give in to me. You're the one who showed mercy, and you're asking for trouble. How can you blame others? A loss is a loss, yet you still want to quibble. You're really unreasonable, shameless, and shameless. Oh heavens, oh earth, do you still have any conscience for saying these words? How can you have the cheek to say this? Minister Chu was so sad and indignant that he wanted to die. How can I bear to ruthlessly punch you in the face? You are as beautiful as a flower. Even if you're willing, I won't agree. Isn't this a joke? With such a mentality, it'd be unreasonable if he didn't get beaten up. Was it Zixieqing's fault? Obviously not. It was obviously someone who was blinded by lust and got beaten up. You're not convinced? Get up and fight again. Get up again. Is there any use in using words? We're martial artists. Xi Xiecheng looked down from above, with the bearing of a winner. I'm not fighting anymore. Chu Yang tilted his head. Fight again? As long as you use your ultimate move, won't I still be a target for you to hit? Are you trying to play me to death? Only a fool would fight again. Not fighting anymore? You don't dare to fight anymore, right? Xi Xiecheng's expression was playful. Can I take it that you're saying that you admit that you're not as strong as me? Since that's the case, let's call off the bet, right? I really can't bear to hit you anymore. If I keep hitting you like that, I'll feel bad too. Let's just leave it at that. People should know their own limits. That won't do. Chu Yang was anxious when he heard that. He jumped up and said with his bruised eyes, Call it off. Fight again. I don't believe it. 2 hours later. A certain someone who obviously deserved a beating lay on the ground with a bruised and swollen face. He looked at the sky and wanted to cry but had no tears. Are you convinced? If you're not, get up and fight again. Xi Xiecheng kicked him, full of provocation. Even if you beat me to death, I won't fight again. Chu Yang didn't move. He was still stubborn. But the bet can't be called off no matter what. That day, we didn't mention the time limit of the bet. As long as I win against you on that day, it has to be counted and I have to fulfill my promise. One day, I'll be a whole level higher than you. When that time comes, I'll use my aura to trap you, and you'll be at my mercy. Let's see how you can still be arrogant. Xi Xiecheng's face turned red upon hearing that. She snorted and said, Mercy? When that time comes, how are you going to punish me? Chu Yang's eyes revealed a strong longing. I want to strip you naked first, and spank your butt while you're naked. Then I'll... Shut up! Xi Xiecheng's face and ears turned red. She kicked him. After a long time, Chu Yang got up with a sigh. He finally realized that at least at this stage, it was impossible for Xi Xiecheng to obediently fulfill the bet with his cultivation. This matter can only be done slowly and wait for the day to come. Since things couldn't be done, Chu Yang hurriedly circulated his martial energy to heal the scars on his face. He sat down listlessly and didn't move at all. Aya, are you still angry? So petty? Xi Xiecheng looked at him from the corner of her eyes. Her tone was somewhat cautious. No, I'm not that petty. Chu Yang said that he wasn't angry, but secretly rolled his eyes. It would be strange if he wasn't angry. Humph! Xi Xiecheng also rolled her eyes at him. This bastard, he's really a bastard. He doesn't understand a woman's thoughts at all. The first time you meet after so many years, you don't speak softly and warmly to each other. Instead, you want to be so direct and so... How can there be such a good thing in this world? If this guy had coaxed me with sweet words for a few days, after a period of time, I might have been able to fight him first, and then go easy on him. I might have let you get what you want, but you actually hit me the moment you came up and wanted to force yourself on me. Do you really think that I don't have a temper? Chu Yang, if you want to conquer me in the future, show me what you're really capable of. Chu Yang definitely didn't expect that his impulsive actions would lead to such serious consequences. If he knew what Xi Xiecheng was thinking at this moment, he would definitely faint from frustration. Therefore, a certain someone really didn't seem to be a master in love. Don't be fooled by others and think that you can succeed and become a laughing stock. Since he couldn't get what he wanted for now, he could only talk about business first. Chapter 2202. Xi Xiecheng smiled and sat down in front of him. She said, You're right. The speed of my advancement is indeed a little illogical. But you've obviously neglected an important point, which is my original cultivation. Actually, my original cultivation was only a little lower than now. I was just injured previously and had not recovered. Since returning to the Heavenly Imperial Court, I destroyed my demonic veins and transformed into a human. Although I had to walk the path of cultivation from the beginning, it was a walk in the park. There were no bottlenecks or obstacles. How could my progress not be fast? Secondly, in this Luohua city, there's a very magical place that can provide me with extremely pure chi of heaven and earth, so that I can quickly improve my cultivation without any worries. During this period of time, I've been cultivating there. 1 day of cultivation is almost equivalent to 1 year of cultivation in the outside world. With such a combination, how could my progress not be fast? Speaking of which, although I've only been on the path of cultivation for a short period of 2 years, my progress in cultivation is equivalent to at least 700 years. It took me 700 years to walk the old path and barely break through to the primary level of saint. Compared to my original intention, it's not very fast. Zixieqing smiled and was very calm. 700 years? 1 day is equivalent to 1 year? Chu Yang's eyes widened. There's actually such a magical place? Chu Yang didn't understand what Zixieqing meant by transforming into a human. Haven't you always transformed into a human? What's so strange about that? So he didn't ask much? So Chu Yang didn't know how much pain, blood, and tears Zixieqing had suffered for this matter. Yes, speaking of which, I found that place by chance after returning to Luohua City this time, Zixieqing said. At that time, I was breaking through the bottleneck of the heavenly level and attracted the heavenly punishment. But when the heavenly punishment came, I clearly felt a strong heat rushing up from the ground. Although it was very weak, it wasn't afraid of the heavenly punishment at all. It even had a feeling that it wanted to devour the heavenly punishment. It was very real. I was naturally very curious about this. After the heavenly punishment, I directly dug a big hole in this Luohua city and began to explore the ground to find the source of the heat. However, I didn't discover anything the entire way down. If it wasn't for the fact that I had a clear feeling of the past, I might have given up long ago. It wasn't until I reached a depth of 70,000 feet that I finally found the vein of this powerful heat. Zixieqing said. There are all kinds of strange things in the world. I followed my senses and dug a few thousand feet underground before I realized that there was a natural place where the stars gathered. Where the stars gather their energy. The corner of Chu Yang's mouth twitched unconsciously. In the land of the Medicine King's legacy, this name was mentioned very seriously. It was said that it was a kind of spirit-gathering formation from ancient times. It was arranged according to the position of the stars and could quickly gather spirit chi for people to cultivate. It could be said that this was the mystical formation that all martial artists yearned for the most. However, this kind of formation had been lost for a long time and was no longer seen in the world. Now, Zixieqing had actually discovered a natural place where the stars gathered their energy. Furthermore, it was buried deep underground and had existed for God knows how many hundreds of thousands of years. Or even millions of years. Then, how great was the spirit chi gathered there? Just by looking at Zixieqing's current cultivation, one could imagine how great the spirit chi was. If the place where the stars gather their energy was used for cultivation, it would definitely allow one to progress 1,000 miles in a day. 1 day's cultivation would be equivalent to 1 year's cultivation. However, if it was used for feng shui, as long as a house was built on top of this place, it would protect a big family for generations to come. As long as the formation was not destroyed, that family would not be able to survive. The third young master of the Tang family who came with you today, his family, the Tang family, has been in Luohua City for generations. Although it is not very prominent in the world, it has experienced hundreds of thousands of years without any decline and has always been prosperous. This is because the ancestral house of the Tang family happened to be located above the eye of the formation where the stars gathered their energy. Zixieqing smiled faintly. Chu Yang couldn't help but be shocked. And the geographical location of Luohua City is surrounded by mountains. The reason why flowers fall all year round and it is like spring all year round is probably because of the benefits brought by the place where the stars gathered their energy. There is another magical thing about the place where the stars gathered their energy. That is, even if a powerful person absorbs all the spirit chi that has been stored for hundreds of millions of years, it will not really damage the origin. In the future, it will grow and brew again. After a relatively long period of precipitation, it will again form a considerable scale. This is a mysterious existence that cannot be explained with ordinary logic, yet it truly exists and is not fake at all, Xi Xiecheng said with some satisfaction. After I discovered this place, I have been practicing martial arts there. Until I broke through to the primary level of saint, the spirit qi inside was still very abundant. According to my calculation, the amount of spirit qi that I consumed was at most 1/10 or 2/10 of the total amount. In fact, I have never even reached the core area. Chu Yang touched his nose and smiled bitterly. So that's the case. During this period of time, no matter who came to see you or to pursue you, you didn't even know about it. Of course, Xi Xiecheng said lightly. I don't have so much time to do such boring things. Chu Yang rejoiced in Tang Yangwei's misfortune. So Yao Ningning and Tang Yangwei's grand courtship was actually just facing an empty courtyard? It was all in vain! How ironic! This is really ha ha ha. Of course, there was also luck. If Xi Xiecheng had seen all those scenes and knew about Yao Ningning's identity, she might not have killed her. At most, she would have beaten her up. Then, the Tang clan's third young master would not be so lucky. Not only the Tang clan's third young master, perhaps the entire Tang clan would suffer. I'll bring you over to have a look now. Xi Xiecheng stood up lightly. In the future, this place belongs to the two of us. Chu Yang laughed out loud and followed after him. They passed by Xi Xiecheng's bedroom first. There was only one bed in the bedroom. It could be said to be extremely simple. If not for the small mirror at the bedside indicating that this was a woman's bedroom, Chu Yang would almost think that this was the residence of a bachelor. Although it was very clean, which was not consistent with a bachelor's room, it was really too simple and crude. The ground was filled with large pieces of jade. Xi Xiecheng stretched out her hand and sucked, and a piece of white jade that was at least 10 feet thick instantly rose from the ground, revealing a bottomless tunnel. She was the first to jump down. Chu Yang followed, not forgetting to restore the jade back to its original state. The falling flowers cottage returned to its original empty state. Chu Yang could only see a graceful figure drifting forward at a very fast speed in front of his eyes. So, he took a deep breath, and followed after her. There were a few turning points in between. Xi Xiecheng must have used this to adjust the direction of their advance. The speed of the two was so fast that it only took a moment for them to pass through the long tunnel and come to a purple crystal door. Previously, I used one of the large purple crystals that you gave me here. Xi Xiecheng looked at this purple crystal and revealed a rare tenderness in her eyes. When I couldn't see you, this purple crystal that you gave me was always with me. Chu Yang obviously could not understand such delicate feelings of a girl. He asked excitedly, the place where the star gathers energy is behind this door? Xi Xiecheng rolled her eyes. Sigh, it was really a waste of her effort to be flirtatious. With such conduct, he still has the cheek to call himself a master of love. Pooh! She said angrily. If it's not behind this door, where else can it be? Are you stupid? Chu Yang scratched his head. He was still puzzled. Why did she suddenly throw a tantrum? Women are really unreasonable. Xi Xiecheng pushed the door open angrily and said angrily, Get in here! Minister Chu pursed his lips. He lowered his head and obediently followed them in. The next moment, he was struck dumb by what he saw. He was at a loss for words. Behind the amethyst gate was an extremely mystical place. The air was filled with rainbow-colored spiritual qi, dancing in the air. As soon as Kai entered this place, he could feel all the pores on his body opening up. Countless pure spiritual qi poured into his body. This kind of shocking atmosphere was only slightly inferior to the spiritual energy in the tribulation space before. Moreover, this was under the condition that he was not practicing martial arts. If he were to practice martial arts wholeheartedly in such a place, what would the effect be? That was really unimaginable. In the center of the array, there was a dense white fog. In the white fog, there was a drip sound every once in a while. This was obviously the phenomenon of liquefaction due to the extremely rich spiritual energy. It turned into golden liquid and dripped down. It was clear that the spiritual energy here was even richer than in the tribulation space. I'm in this position. Xi Xiecheng pointed to a futon at the edge. When I'm practicing martial arts, I meditate here. As for the center position, I didn't go in. The level of spiritual energy there is not high enough for me to absorb. Didn't go in? Couldn't absorb? Chu Jiang suddenly felt inexplicably touched. It was better to be in the center position. But Xi Xiecheng didn't go in, definitely not because she couldn't take such a lame reason. With her cultivation, there was no situation where she couldn't take it. In other words, even if she really couldn't take it, this place was completely under her control and she could leave at any time. She didn't go in because she wanted to leave the best position for one person. She said this because she wanted that person to have no psychological burden at all. Chu Yang. Chapter 2203. Xi Xiecheng had always believed that Chu Yang would be able to come here and find her, and reunite with her. He was still weak and needed a place like this to improve his strength. Chu Yang understood in an instant. His heart was filled with warmth, and he couldn't say a word. After a long while, he said softly, "Big Sister Xi, if there comes a day when I defeat you, you will marry me." He wanted to slap himself after saying that. What nonsense was this? Didn't this remind her again? Did my mouth not know how to speak properly today? But Xi Xiecheng nodded her head in an unusually docile manner and said, "Okay." Chu Yang didn't expect her to agree so readily. He was shocked and said, "Actually, I can defeat you now. Why don't you marry me now?" Xi Xiecheng was already sitting cross-legged and practicing. Only Chu Yang was on the other side with tears all over his face. He slapped himself regretfully and said, "I'll punish this cheap mouth of yours. You're really too greedy. You're too insatiable. Chu Yang, you're also a fool. You know that you won't be able to say anything today, but you still want to say it. You deserve to be so unlucky." In the empty space, there were only two people sitting on opposite sides and practicing. Xi Xiecheng practiced for a while as usual. Suddenly, she felt that something was wrong. She opened her eyes, and saw that Chu Yang was sitting not too far away from her. But he didn't seem to be paying attention to her. But the speed at which he was absorbing spiritual energy was thousands of times faster than hers. The spiritual energy made whooshing sounds and poured into Chu Yang's body just like that. With such a speed, if 1 day of practice here was equivalent to 1 year of practice, then 1 day of practice here was equivalent to decades of practice or even more. Oh my God! How could this be? Even if Di was here, he wouldn't be able to absorb spiritual energy like this, right? Chu Yang's face was solemn and dignified. It was obvious that he had already entered a state of deep meditation without any distractions. Xi Xiecheng knew this very well and naturally wouldn't disturb him. She could only continue to meditate and return to the state of practice. When Chu Yang opened his eyes again, he couldn't help but get a huge shock. The spiritual qi in this space was so thin that it was pitiful. It seemed that there was only a cloud of white mist left at the core, shrouding a vague water. As for the rest of the spiritual energy that filled the sky, not a single drop was present. Ha! How could this be? Is there any other unforeseen event? Chu Yang opened his eyes wide. His eyes were full of disbelief. This was truly unimaginable. He turned around and saw Xi Xiecheng staring at him speechlessly. What happened? What? You still dare to ask me what's wrong? Xi Xiecheng was furious. You've sucked the entire place dry. Tell me what's going on. Me? Chu Yang pointed at his own nose. Am I so awesome? Xi Xiecheng nodded speechlessly. Her face was full of astonishment. She had originally kept these things for Chu Yang. Even if he sucked them all dry, it wouldn't matter. But the problem now was, how could he absorb them so quickly? Wasn't this too fast? Chu Yang was also very confused about this. Wouldn't I be invincible if I had such an absorbing ability? But what's going on this time? His divine sense instantly entered the space and saw that the sword spirit was already smiling crookedly. This is great. We actually found such a good place. With this unforeseen event, our space can be considered to have achieved great success. The sword spirit was overjoyed. It has already transformed into a complete small world. Chu Yang looked at the sword spirit speechlessly. The changes outside were caused by you. All the spiritual energy was sucked in by you. That's for sure. The sword spirit said righteously. Why didn't you seize the time to suck in all the spiritual energy when you encountered such a good thing? Are you waiting for others to take advantage of you in the future? Chu Yang groaned. But the problem is that we still need to practice martial arts here. But your hand just sucked it all away. What do you mean by that? Isn't such a good place to practice martial arts wasted? Even if the characteristics of the places where spiritual energy gathers are special, and it contains spiritual energy again, it will take at least tens of thousands of years to recover the spiritual energy. What do you call this? The sword spirit said disapprovingly. What did I do? I'm doing something serious. As long as we have our space, why do we need to practice martial arts in such a place? Now that the space has achieved great success, the spiritual energy inside is not much worse than that of this place outside. Moreover, it's endless and will never waver. It's not like this place, which is like a tree without roots. Once it's used up, it will take a lot of time and effort to gather spiritual energy again. There are many drawbacks. The two of you can practice martial arts directly in the space. The effect is not much different, and you don't have to worry about the day when the spiritual energy runs out. Isn't it much more comfortable than practicing outside? In the past, the fool bought the casket and returned the pearl. He was a laughingstock for thousands of years. You are the master of the tribulation sword, yet you follow the example of the fool? Chu Yang's eyes lit up when he heard this. Yes, practice in the space. Wouldn't it be better? And they don't have to worry about being disturbed. Even if this place is hidden, it's still. It can't be compared to the space. Then, Chu Yang suddenly thought of another urgent matter. Perhaps we can make use of this place to completely resolve the matter of Tai Batian and the rest. It's killing two birds with one stone. It's just right. Thinking of this, he hurriedly explained the reason to Zi Xieching. After Zi Xieching learned that this change was caused by the space, she immediately felt relieved. Speaking of which, Zi Xieching wasn't worried. In fact, it had nothing to do with the spiritual energy disappearing or not. Right from the start, she was only worried about whether Chu Yang would explode from this huge amount of spiritual energy. Now that she knew the reason, she naturally felt relieved. As for what Chu Yang wanted to do in the future, she didn't care at all. She would only do her best to cooperate. The two of them walked into the core of the place where the spiritual energy gathered. At the core, there was actually a small pool. The pool was filled with that kind of golden liquid. It was extremely viscous, and it constantly emitted the purest energy of the universe. Compared to the spiritual energy earlier, this is the real good stuff. Chu Yang took a breath. It's actually the purest golden jade fluid. Zi Xieching also looked at the 100 drops of golden jade fluid here and was in a daze. Although there wasn't much golden jade fluid here, just one drop was enough to unleash a miraculous and powerful effect. With the current cultivation of Chu Yang and Yi Shiwen, even if they exhausted their cultivation to the extreme and were like a lamp that had run out of oil, they would only need one drop at most to completely replenish their depleted cultivation. In fact, they would even have a considerable amount of wealth. Why aren't you keeping this treasure? Zi Xieching hurriedly urged. Without another word, Chu Yang reached out. The moment his fingertips came into contact with the golden jade fluid, the golden jade fluid had already been completely absorbed by the sword spirit into the space. Leave one drop here. Don't take it all away just to drain the pond to catch the fish, Chu Yang hurriedly said. Finally, he left one drop as the foundation. It rolled around in the pool all by itself, but it still emitted a brilliant golden light. It was ethereal but inextinguishable. If we really take it all away, although the feng shui here won't be completely destroyed, it might not be possible to restore it to its current state even after millions of years. But as long as we leave one drop here as the foundation, this process of reaccumulation will be greatly shortened. Perhaps in just a few 100,000 years, we will be able to have a pool like this again. One shouldn't be too overboard. Cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots was suitable for deep hatred, but not for such a place with treasures of the universe. Draining the pond to catch the fish was undoubtedly the most foolish method. Zi Xieching naturally understood this logic. She looked at Chu Yang approvingly. If we completely use the golden jade fluid as an elixir that can instantly restore one's cultivation, it will be a little too wasteful. I think we should use it to improve the spring of life first. The sword spirit transmitted his voice from the space. As long as the spring of life is improved by another level and used to nourish great elixirs in the space, then in the future, every drop of the spring of life can be used to make super heavy elixirs. In other words, mass production of super heavy elixirs is not out of our reach. Really? Chu Jian was a little surprised. How can this be fake? With this golden jade fluid, we can basically achieve an endless supply of heavy elixirs in the future. Moreover, the amount of herbs required will also be relatively reduced. It's much more worth it than gradually using up the golden jade fluid. The sword spirit said with certainty. That's great. Chu Yang was excited. You have taken all the benefits here. Let's go out. It was obvious that Zi Xieching was very happy. Yes, okay. The two of them walked out hand in hand. As they walked out, they silently and completely blocked off the passageway, eliminating the possibility of anyone else entering this space from this passageway. From now on, only Chu Yang and Zi Xieching knew about this place where the energy of the heavens and earth gathered. This place would be an excellent secret cultivation place for a very, very long time in the future. Oh right, there's one more thing that I need Big Sister Zi's help with. Chu Yang said. What is it? Say it. It's like this. Chu Yang explained the current situation of Tai Batian and the others in detail. He said, I'll let everyone appear from here. Then I'll tell everyone that they've been cultivating at your place all this while. What do you think of this? That's not a problem. Zi Xieching agreed immediately. Speaking of which, I haven't seen that female emperor of yours before. I'd really like to see what kind of beauty she is and what kind of majestic aura she has. Although Zi Xieching's voice was very calm, Chu Yang could clearly feel the strong sense of jealousy hidden in it. Chapter 2204. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. Sigh, I've knocked over another vinegar jar. Women, no matter what kind of women they are, no matter how strong their cultivation is, they still can't get rid of the nature of women. Under Zi Xieching's expectant gaze, Chu Yang waved his hand and Tai Batian, Wu Qianqian, Xia Danfeng, Huyan Aobo and the rest all came out. Instantly, the entire Falling Flowers cottage became a female army. From a man and a woman, it became a man and a bunch of women. Fortunately, many of these female army knew Zi Xieching. For example, Wu Qianqian and Zi Xieching had met before. Now that they had unexpectedly reunited, they were pleasantly surprised. Everyone chattered together excitedly. The fiery scene that Chu Yang had expected did not appear. Tai Batian and Zi Xieching met for the first time. Both of them looked at each other. Then, both of them had a strong intuition, a strong opponent. However, Zi Xieching's grace was unattainable while Tai Batian's calm demeanor made both of them admire each other very much. Although there was some jealousy in their hearts, they couldn't help but like each other. Pay attention, everyone should know that everyone has been hiding here all this time. Do you all understand? Chu Yang made a gesture and said. All the women laughed at the same time. Yes, we have been taking refuge at Big Sister Zi's place all this time. Ha ha. Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But facing so many female army at the same time, it was really beyond his ability. He could only continue to let people out. Then, Shifty Cat, Lazy, Wan Dao, Brother Tiger, Duan Sunkung, Lightning Snake and their subordinates came out. 30 to 40 people were let out at once. Falling Flower's cottage was instantly filled with people. It was even noisier than a market. After explaining the current situation and the things to pay attention to, everyone understood the current situation. After carefully calculating everyone's cultivation, Chu Yang couldn't help but be shocked. Only then did he realize that his capital had unknowingly become so strong. Among this group of people, the one with the highest cultivation was naturally Brother Tiger. He was now a saint-level expert, above Chu Yang and Zi Xieching. Then there was Lightning Snake and the others. The three of them were originally only at the peak of saint level, but they had now risen to the celestial level. There was also Duan Sungkong, who had now reached the celestial level. However, Wang Dao's progress was the most terrifying. He had now advanced to the primary level of the celestial being realm, and there was still room for improvement. Wang Dao believed that there would be room for a breakthrough in the future. As for the limit of cultivation, it was not him, but Chu Yang. The higher Chu Yang advanced, the more room for improvement he would have. In this way, even if Chu Yang did not include the divine soul of the tribulation, he already had 3 saints. If Meng Wuya was included, it would be 4. As for celestials, there were no less than 30 of them, including Bai Yuchan and the others. Most of the others were at the saint level. The weakest among them are the ladies. But even the weakest Madame May has already reached the peak of heaven stage. She can handle most situations. Such a powerful lineup was almost comparable to a super sect. And it had to be one of the top 10 sects in the heavenly imperial court. Even if there was still a long way to go in terms of comprehensive strength compared to the old top super sects like Dreamlike Veranda and Heavenly Sword Union, but compared to the strength of the top 80 sects, it was definitely not to be outdone, or even better. And the rarest thing about this team was that everyone was exceptionally loyal to Chu Yang. It was as if they had formed an iron army that couldn't be broken or dragged down. From the beginning of Chu Yang's formation to the current situation, it only took a little more than half a year. Now, looking at the current situation, it could definitely be regarded as a golden, a glorious scene. Thinking back, it was really like a dream. Chu Yang had experienced so many things in this half a year. If he really had to relive it all again, Chu Yang was afraid that he would rather die than be willing to do so. So many hardships that he really did not want to relive them. He had experienced nearly 1,000 life and death experiences. Sometimes, he would encounter 20 to 30 life and death situations in a single day. At that time, he didn't think much of it, and just kept charging forward. However, when he thought about it later, he was covered in cold sweat. He didn't know how he managed to get through it. Maybe if there was just a little bit of mistake, even his bones would have been rotted by now. Zi Xieching looked at Chu Yang's current team and was really surprised. Chu Yang, you really did not slack off during this period of time. What methods did you use to gather so many experts? I'm afraid that even ordinary super sects don't have such a team. Looking at Lightning Snake and the others who were organizing the team, Chu Yang smiled bitterly in his heart. He did not know how to answer. Then, Chu Yang asked everyone to wait here. He went back to the inn and prepared to bring all the people over to do a comprehensive reorganization. With so many people, there must be a unified leader. Otherwise, it would be a taboo problem for a big force if they did not have a proper name. Just as he returned to the inn, he saw Meng Wuya sitting in the hall sickly. And the group of people beside him were all shouting and jeering. It was chaos. Among them, Ning Ning's voice was the sharpest. No, no! As the saying goes, if you agree to bet, you have to accept defeat. You can't go back on your word. No matter what, you can't. When did I go back on my word? I was just waiting for Chu Yang to come back. How can you say that I lost the bet now? Tan Tan's voice clearly had some denial. Let's just hurry up and honor the bet. To think that I rushed here to watch you make a fool of yourself, but I ended up waiting for an entire day and night. I say, Brother Tan, you can't be like this. If you agree to a bet, you have to accept your loss. How can you use such a despicable method like cheating? Tang Clan's third young master said with dissatisfaction. As he spoke, he seemed to yawn. Obviously, he had not slept for a long time. This situation seemed very obvious. They wanted Tan Tan to honor the bet, but Tan Tan was acting shamelessly. Chu Yang despised this group of people who were taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. Then, he walked to Meng Wuya's side and said, "General Meng, how about we have a chat?" Meng Wuya looked at him with lifeless eyes and said, "Okay." The two of them went to the room. "I don't know what Manor Lord Chu wants to talk about with this old man." Meng Wuya's spirit was obviously not right. His entire person looked very dispirited. Whether it was his appearance, bearing, or physique, it seemed that he had aged a lot. Under this opportunity, not only had he not recovered from his serious injuries, but his mental state had also suffered a terrible blow. His life's creed had completely collapsed. It was not easy for Meng Wuya to still be standing. Chu Yang sighed. He took out a heavy pill and handed it over. "General Meng, before we talk, I think it's necessary for you to restore your condition. I don't feel good looking at you right now." Meng Wuya sighed. He seemed to hesitate for a moment. Then, he finally took it and said, "Manor Lord Chu is very considerate. But I know my injuries. I won't be able to recover without 30 to 50 years. But I still have to thank Manor Lord Chu for his kindness." As he spoke, he swallowed the heavy pill. The next moment, Meng Wuya suddenly exclaimed. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Chu Yang in amazement. Then, he suddenly closed his eyes and began to circulate his martial power. He urged the medicinal power to circulate throughout his body. In fact, the medicinal power of the heavy pill did not need to be deliberately guided by martial power. But under Meng Wuya's all-out urging, the medicinal power spread even faster. It rapidly circulated throughout his body, constantly healing and nourishing his serious injuries. His meridians, which were almost in a mess before, were restored to their original state in a very short period of time. An unimaginably large amount of spiritual power flowed through his body in an orderly manner. Meng Wuya's heavy injuries had actually recovered by half in an instant. His spiritual energy was still flowing slowly, as if it hadn't been used up yet. Even the external wounds on his body were slowly healing. They formed scabs, itched, and new muscles were growing. It was really like the legend of life and death, flesh and bones. After a while, a thick white fog gradually emerged from Meng Wuya's head. After a long time, the white fog gradually dispersed. Meng Wuya took a deep breath. After inhaling and exhaling, he slowly exhaled. Then, he opened his eyes and looked at Chu Yang. "What kind of medicine is this? How can it be so effective?" Chu Yang smiled and said, "I wonder how much of General Meng's injuries have recovered?" Meng Wuya felt for a while and said, "It's really a miraculous medicine. My injuries originally needed at least 10 years to recover. Unexpectedly, in such a short period of time, I've recovered 70%. Not only that, it's as much as 75%. 75%. Chu Yang did a rough calculation in his heart. In the heavenly realm, a heavy pill in the ordinary sense could restore the entire cultivation of a lower-level supreme martial artist. It could also treat any serious internal or external injuries. However, in this heavenly imperial court, a super-improved heavy pill could only restore 75% of a saint's cultivation. Chu Yang breathed a sigh of relief. 75% was already very good. After all, the target was a saint-level expert. He was almost the top existence in this world. However, the effect of a new version of the heavy pill might not be that great. That was because the healing process also required the saint's own self-healing ability. Therefore, the effect of the heavy pills should be reduced by a little. Therefore, the real effect of the heavy pills should be more than 70%. However, this was already a lot. At the very least, it could save the life of a top-notch expert at a critical moment. "This is my unique miraculous medicine. I call it heavy pill," Chu Yang said softly. "I'm already very happy that it can be of help to General Meng's injuries." Meng Wuya stood up solemnly and bowed deeply. "Thank you, Villa Master Chu, for giving me such a miraculous medicine. I'll remember this kindness in my heart. I won't dare to forget it." Chu Yang chuckled. He waved his hand and said, "This pill is a trivial matter to me. It's not worth mentioning. General Meng, you don't have to take it to heart. The main purpose of my conversation with General Meng today is to ask what plans General Meng has for the future. Please give me a few votes for the author of the year. The day after tomorrow is my father's birthday. Therefore, I'm saving my manuscript. I can't stop writing the day after tomorrow. But I really don't have time to write, so I can't explode in these 2 days. Please understand." Chapter 2205. The Road in the Future, haha. Meng Wuya's face suddenly changed, and he laughed bitterly. "Now that I'm here, what future do I have? When Yu Xiao returns this time, he will definitely slander me. I'm afraid that my name as a traitor has already been confirmed. Mo Tian, I definitely won't be able to return. It's just a pity that so many good brothers have been implicated by me because they accompanied me. They have a home but can't return. The future is vast. Although the world is big, there is no place for me anymore." Meng Wuya laughed bitterly. His expression became dispirited and gloomy. Everyone walks on the world's path. How can there be no way out? I have a path for you to walk on, Chu Yang said lightly. Manor Lord wants me to submit to you. Meng Wuya looked at him with a faint smile. Yes. Chu Yang did not hesitate. Although Manor Lord is strong enough now, you are still far from being on par with Mo Tian. Moreover, although my Dream Slayer army has lost more than half of its strength, it is not something that Manor Lord can recruit now. Meng Wuya smiled faintly. You will, Chu Yang said firmly. You definitely will. Meng Wuya was about to laugh coldly, but he was shocked by Chu Yang's resolute tone. He held back his laughter. Where did he get such confidence from? Is it because I have no other way out now? Meng Wuya was not an unintelligent person. If Chu Yang was clearly taking advantage of him now, Meng Wuya would definitely not follow him. However, Meng Wuya also believed that Chu Yang would not threaten him like this. He was not that stupid. Since that was the case, how could Chu Yang convince him? I'd like to hear the details. Meng Wuya sat up straight. You will, because you and I have the same goal. Chu Yang said word by word. My goal is not to become someone like Di Ho. I, Chu Yang, must create a man's glory in this life. Meng Wuya's eyes lit up and he quietly waited for him to continue. Although I, Chu Yang, ascended from the lower world to the heavenly imperial court, I am not willing to continue like this. I must do something in this life. Chu Yang said slowly. I'm even more unwilling to spend my life in a feud with Mo Tian. Oh? Then, this Meng dares to ask Manor Master Chu, what is it that Your Excellency wants to do? Meng Wuya looked at Chu Yang somewhat wearily. He also wanted to build a career, but at this moment, his heart was already exhausted. My ultimate goal at this stage is very simple. That is, to exterminate the extraterrestrial demons and restore the purple cloud heavens. Chu Yang said word by word. I will advance towards this goal step by step and will not change. This extremely abrupt and unexpected argument caused Meng Wuya to suddenly feel the blood in his entire body boiling. Slaughter the heavenly demons! Restore purple firmament! This goal was the dream of countless hot-blooded men in the Heaven Imperial Court. Meng Wuya suddenly raised his head and looked at Chu Yang. His eyes shone brightly. The decadence from before suddenly disappeared without a trace. I've been working hard. I've been working hard to make myself stronger and have enough power and influence. Chu Yang stared into Meng Wuya's eyes and said lightly. When I first ascended the Heaven Imperial Court, my cultivation was not even at the Earth level. In less than a year, I crossed the Heaven level and rushed into the Saint level. I crossed the Heaven level and became a Saint. General Meng has seen my growth with your own eyes. You should know that I'm not lying or exaggerating. My cultivation is still improving. I'm confident that I can reach the peak of the Saint level within 2 years. Chu Yang's words made Meng Wuya tremble a little. Reach the peak of the Saint level within 2 years? This sentence was too arrogant. How many people who started from the beginner level of the saint level couldn't reach the peak of the saint level within 200,000 years? What right did Chu Yang have to say this? But, thinking of Chu Yang's soaring cultivation all the way, Meng Wuya couldn't help but believe it. Maybe this was a miracle, but Chu Yang might be able to do it. In less than a year, I've grown from a group of Xian level and human level to 3 saints and over 30 heaven level. I'm preparing to shock the world one day. I'm preparing for the day when I can gather my troops and go straight to the battlefield to exterminate the demons. Chu Yang said solemnly. Perhaps this is a path of no return in the eyes of ordinary people, but, as a man, there are things to do and things not to do. In this life, one must always do something of value. This is my goal, my ultimate goal at this stage. I can tell General Meng another thing, a very important thing. Other than me, I have another brother. They ascended to the Heaven Imperial Court with me and are now scattered in different worlds. The power that each of them has now is not as good as mine, but I believe it's not much worse. It's even possible that some of them have already surpassed the level of power that I have now. Chu Yang smiled contentedly. When we gather together again, we'll definitely take over the world and kill our way to the purple cloud heavens. I'm here to sincerely invite General Meng to join my army. Chu Yang said seriously. If General Meng is willing to stay, then, when we march to the purple cloud heavens in the future, I can guarantee that millions of soldiers under General Meng will be unstoppable. When we kill the extraterrestrial demons and restore the purple cloud heavens, all of your bad reputation will also disappear. History will leave the truth for you and me, and the history books will record the legends that we have created. Of course, this is a fixed long-term goal. Maybe we don't have that kind of ability now, but I believe that we will achieve it one day. General Meng, I won't force you to decide which path to take. Please consider it carefully. After a while, Chu Yang walked out of Meng Wuya's room with a smile. It was as if a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. Meng Wuya agreed after some consideration. This made Chu Yang feel a little more confident. Among his brothers there was Mo Tianji, who could strategize and win battles from 1,000 miles away. The others could basically play the role of vanguard, or go through the enemy's ranks and kill generals and capture flags. But when it came to leading troops to war and being great generals, only Ao Xieyun and Xie Danqiong had the ability to lead an army alone. As for Gu Duxing, if you asked him to assassinate the enemy's big shots, he would be a super suitable candidate. But when it came to leading an army, Gu Duxing would tell you very straightforwardly, stop fooling around. Now, with Meng Wuya's strong addition, it was equivalent to filling a gap that had been lacking for a long time in this aspect for Chu Yang. Now, in terms of the current manpower, there was Tai But-Ian to wield power and look at the overall situation. There was Wu Qianqian to charge and break through enemy lines. There was himself, Zi Xieching, Tan Tan and the other brothers. And there was Meng Wuya to lead the army, win battles from 1,000 miles away, and strategize. The model of a small imperial court was quietly built just like that. On this night, under the witness of the demon race's Grand Elder and the 2 saints, Chu Yang officially established his own private force. The number of people participating was not very high. There were only a total of 1,100 people participating. This number was not even comparable to a third-rate sect or an ordinary aristocratic family. However, all of them were elites. Chu Yang's private force, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, really rose on this day. Yes, this was the name. This was the name that Chu Yang had thought of long ago. Firstly, he didn't want to forget everything that happened in the Double Heavens continent. He didn't want to forget his brothers, friends, and enemies. Secondly, it was natural for heavenly soldiers to fight heavenly demons. Therefore, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion that belonged to the Tribulation Brothers was born in the Double Heavens Imperial Court. Chu Yang was the minister of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion in the Double Heavens Imperial Court. Tai Batian was the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion in the Double Heavens Imperial Court. Wu Qianqian was the Deputy Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. She assisted Tai Batian and was in charge of the overall affairs. There were 5 halls below. Wild Blade Hall, Duan Senkon was the hall master. There were 300 swordsmen of saint level and above under him. They were respectively commanded by Lightning Snake, Thunderbolt Wild Blade, and Giant Spirit Blade. Divine Sword Hall, Bai Yuchen was the hall master. There were 300 swordsmen under him. 10,000 Miles Hall, Meng Wuya was the hall master. All the soldiers of the Dream Slayer army belonged to this hall. Torture Hall, Wang Dao was the temporary hall master. Information Hall was temporarily under Wu Qianqian's supervision. Because Chu Yang knew that Mo Tianji, who was the most suitable for this task, had not arrived yet. And there was a great chance that this information hall would have already taken over the entire world by the time Mo Tianji arrived. I didn't waste my time. So, why would Mo Tianji waste his time? I told Meng Wuyan that my brother might have already surpassed me in strength. And I wasn't lying, Chief Supervisor, Zi Xieching. However, outside of these 5 halls, Chu Yang met with trouble that he didn't know if it was trouble. Great Demon King Tan pestered him to establish his own hall and merge it with the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. When it came to the name of the hall, Tan proudly came up with a name, Demon Hall. As soon as these 3 words came out, more than 1,000 people roared with laughter. More than 1,000 high-level cultivators laughed together. It was not an exaggeration to say that the roof was almost blown off. But Tan insisted on using this name. Chu Yang had to let him be. Anyway, this guy didn't do any work. Demon Hall, so be it. At least I don't have to be tortured by him anymore, so, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion inexplicably became a hall. In addition, there was a secret force that specialized in assassination. Wang Dao, Rui Butong, Gu Duxing, Tribulation Spirit, and the others would be the main figures after the force was formed. This organization didn't belong to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, but it was closely related to Chu Yang. For safety reasons, Chu Yang decided not to let Xia Danfeng and the others show up for the time being. So Tan still didn't know that Xia Danfeng was now in the Falling Flowers villa. Anyway, he just straightened his neck and accepted everyone's congratulations. He was promoted to Hall Master. Chapter 2206. The reason of the 2 saints of the demon race was very reasonable. Tan joined the Heavenly Armament Pavilion because he was Chu Yang's junior martial brother. It didn't matter what his identity was. But you, a saint of the demon race, joining a small Jianghu gang, why are you joining in the fun? Yao Ningning was unhappy, but she had to give up the idea for the time being. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion was officially established. Everyone was very lively that night. That night, Shifty and Lazy bid farewell to Chu Yang and returned to the Cat Clan to prepare for the alliance with Chu Yang's Heavenly Armament Pavilion. They were ready to send troops to Purple Cloud Heavens together at the critical moment. These were all things that needed to be prepared. In order to congratulate the establishment of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, the Tang clan's 3rd young master waved his hand and sent a personal gift of 500,000 Purple Cloud coins. This kind of extravagance caused everyone to be quite shocked. Just 500,000 Purple Cloud coins could provide for an army of 100,000 for 10 years. Chu Yang was very happy to accept this gift, but he turned a deaf ear to the Tang clan's 3rd young master's request to join the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. The Tang clan's 3rd young master was unhappy. He also wanted to be a hall master or something. If he wasn't strong enough, he would use money to make up for it. But he still didn't have a chance. Seeing this, Tan went forward to comfort him. I say, 3rd young master, it's not that I don't want you because I look down on you. If you were a little more handsome, maybe boss would agree. The problem is, the Tang clan's 3rd young master looked at Tan's face with grief and indignation. After panting for a long time, he suddenly shouted, "You haven't fucking fulfilled the bet!" Tan's face immediately darkened. Now he was afraid of people talking about this topic. Yes. Everyone was eager to see the world in chaos. Hearing this, they went forward together and clamored. They had strength in numbers and directly pressed Tan to the ground. Quickly fulfill the bet! Everyone shouted together. Seeing this, Chu Yang was stunned. After thinking for a long time, he didn't intervene. He didn't expect that the first big thing after the establishment of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion was to listen to Tan Tan's self-reflection. Okay, Tan Tan shouted. His face was bruised and swollen. He jumped up from the crowd. Isn't it just a self-reflection? I'll just honor the bet right now. Chu Yang, you goddamn unlucky senior marshal brother, you didn't even say anything to help me out. I'll remember you. How dare you scold me? You really don't know what's good for you. Remember me? All right, I'll let you remember my generation. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and immediately instructed Zi Xiecheng to let Xie Danfeng come over quietly to listen to someone's self-reflection. Xie Danfeng had always been concerned about Tan Tan. After all, he was her husband. Now that she heard that Tan Tan was here, she naturally rushed over. Huyan Aobuat and the others also came over in high spirits. However, they were arranged behind the curtains by Chu Yang. He warned them seriously. No one is allowed to make a sound. All of the girls nodded excitedly in agreement. He could only hear the clamor outside. Then, Tan Tan's voice could be heard yelling somewhere. Inspection? Isn't it just a self-reflection? What's the hurry? Allow me to mull over my words. Yao Ningning roared. Don't forget the key points of the review. Get lost. Tan Tan flew into a rage. I'll beat you up if you say another word. I'll let you know why the flowers are so red. If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. Don't threaten the person involved. 1,000 people shouted together. The hidden illness of the Tang clan's third young master had already been cured by Chu Yang. At this moment, he was shouting the loudest. What are they doing? Why are they so angry? Xie Danfeng whispered. Yes, it's just a bet. Tan Tan lost the bet. Now, he's fulfilling the original bet. Zi Xiecheng smiled. Serves him right. He should be taught a lesson, Xie Danfeng said hatefully. At this moment, amidst the commotion, everyone threw Tan Tan onto the stage. There was even a table on the stage for Tan Tan to stand on. He was really the center of attention. Tan Tan stood on the high table and looked down from above. He was looking around complacently, as if he was doing something big that everyone was looking at. He didn't look dejected at all after losing the bet. Instead, he looked proud and elated. Hurry up! 1,000 people shouted together. I'm here to reflect on myself. Tan Tan shouted. I've always lost a bet. If I'm willing to bet, I must accept my loss. So, I'm here to reflect on myself. In order to fulfill the bet, I've become shameless today. The audience burst into laughter. When Xie Danfeng heard this familiar voice, she suddenly had the urge to rush out and beat this guy up. As everyone knows, although I'm very handsome, although I'm a master in love, although young ladies and young wives are captivated by me. Tan Tan started to reflect on himself in a loud voice. Although this argument really didn't sound like one. Behind the curtain, Xie Danfeng's almond-shaped eyes widened when she heard this. She was furious. You're actually a master in love, and you've even seduced so many young ladies. You're really capable. But my IQ isn't high. I'm a pig. Tan Tan started to shout in high spirits according to the bet. There wasn't the slightest bit of embarrassment. But countless people below the stage had already started to spit out food and water. Everyone was thrown off their feet. I'm a stupid pig. I'm a very handsome stupid pig. But a pig is a pig. Tan Tan's complexion remained calm. I'm saying this because I lost the bet. But I'm not a pig. I'm a pig, but I have many virtues. Many people laughed so hard that they held their stomachs and spasmed. According to the development trend, they might laugh until something bad happened. In summary, I'm really a stupid pig. It's true. Tan Tan's voice was full of complacency. Complacent. After the initial bit of embarrassment, it gradually evolved into a shameless person. He became more and more excited. I've finished my self-reflection. Do you still want to hear it? If you want to hear it, I can make another one. I'm a cow, a stupid cow. It was as if they were holding a concert. Dong! Chu Yang's head smashed onto the table in a free-fall style and bounced twice. My junior brother, can you have some integrity? When you go out, you must not call me senior brother. Master who is far away in the heavenly layer, will you let me, the senior brother, clean up the sect? Bastard! Why yeah. Xia Dan Feng couldn't bear it any longer. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws, and rushed out. She then put her hands on her hips. Tan, you bastard! Why haven't you come down yet? Tan was startled when he heard this. He fixed his eyes on her, and was instantly shocked. I've seen a ghost. Oh my God! Why is this woman here? This is going to take my life. Heavens! Earth! Save me! Xia Dan Feng jumped on the stage with a whoosh sound. Then, she reached out and grabbed Demon King Tan's ear. She furiously said, Haven't you lost enough face? Are you a pig? Are you a cow? What are you? Then, she forcefully twisted his ear at least 180 degrees. Tan let out an ow sound. Then, his body turned upside down. His belly bulged out, and he stepped on the ground with one foot. It hurts. Let go! You lucky little girl. Why did you suddenly appear? What's going on? If I didn't appear, I wouldn't have known that you're a master in love. You've also hooked up with many beautiful women. You're really awesome. Xia Dan Feng spoke until here. Only then did she realize that there was absolute silence below. Countless people were staring at him, Tan, and old Madame Tan. And she was actually holding Tan's ear like this on the stage. It seemed that she had been in this position for a while. She couldn't help but feel ashamed. Get down! I'm going to settle accounts with you. The two immediately jumped off the stage. Then, they quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. There was a moment of silence below. Then, a burst of earth-shattering laughter suddenly broke out. Some people slapped the table and held their stomachs. They were laughing so hard that their snot and tears were flowing. Tan is really miserable this time. I don't need to personally clean up the house. It's enough for him to suffer. Chu Yang took pleasure in Tan's misfortune as he pondered. Then, he heard Tan's miserable screams from behind. Tan seemed to be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Spare my life, ah. I was just casually talking. Don't take it seriously. Chu Yang silently opened his mouth. You deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve retribution. Two great experts, what do you think the future prospects of Chu Yang's heavenly armament pavilion will be like? Yao Ningning left the venue and returned to her room. Then, she asked Uncle Hu and Uncle Ma this question. Limitless. It's hard to estimate. Uncle Hu and Uncle Ma's expressions were very serious as they gave this answer. Clearly, the amazing strength that Chu Yan had displayed after gathering all the members had shocked the two saint-level powerhouses from the bottom of their hearts. If it continues to develop at this scale, I believe that in less than 50 years, Chu Yang's strength will be able to contend against one side of the world. Moreover, this estimate doesn't include those brothers that he mentioned earlier. If what he said is true, his strength will be even harder to estimate. At least, the strength of one side of the world will not be enough to contend against him. Uncle Ma sighed and said, If such a huge force were to develop vigorously in our Demon Emperor Heaven, it would not be a good thing for our Demon Emperor Heaven. We had always thought that we had already thought highly of this Chu Yang. But in the end, we still underestimated him. Yao Ningning said indifferently, Is that so? I agree with this assessment of Chu Yang's future strength. But as for saying that Chu Yang's rise is not a good thing for Demon Emperor Heaven, I don't think so. Mother often says that in this world there are pros and cons. It's just that everyone's point of view is different. Tomorrow is the birthday of heaven-breaking old Ka and Qinshui Nian Yu. Yes, let us wish this little sister and brother a happy birthday. Every year, I will drink to you tonight. Tomorrow is my dad's birthday. Right now, I have one chapter in stock. I'm still lacking one. I'll work overtime tonight to rush it out. I can't write on my dad's birthday. Otherwise, he'll beat me up if he feels uncomfortable. How many years have I been beating him up since I was young? It's very smooth. After finding a wife, he'll change the person to beat me up. There's actually a relay for this plaything. Cough, tomorrow's 2 chapters will be released at 10 p.m. and 17 p.m. tomorrow. At that time, I'll be on the drinking table. Hee hee. Chapter 2207. The Hu and Ma duo said, "Oh?" The meaning of the word "oh" was quite profound. On the one hand, he was suspicious of Yao Ningning's words. On the other hand, he was surprised that Yao Ningning could say such a thing. How could our most unreliable master say such a rational thing? Chu Yang himself is like a miracle, a legend. He rose to power so quickly from an impossible situation. But you've only paid attention to his current situation. But you've neglected a very important premise. Chu Yang's current growth has been caused by enormous pressure. Yao Ningning's face no longer had the naivety from before. Instead, it was replaced by an indescribable sense of calm contemplation. When he was weak, he was always bullied by powerful external forces, and it was because of this bullying that he was forced to constantly move forward, forcing him to gradually improve himself. As he continues to grow stronger and stronger, the external pressure also increases. It's as if there's a magic spell of pressure surrounding Chu Yang. However, this magic spell may also be a different kind of tonic. Until later, he killed Yuan Shetu. Now that I've made an extremely powerful enemy, the pressure on me has increased to a point where I'm almost invincible. If you say that Chu Yang didn't have the confidence to escape, I wouldn't believe it. Because as long as he hid, with his strength at that time, he wouldn't attract attention at all. Escaping alone was not a big target. Yuan Tianji was furious when Yuan Shetu died, but he might not be able to find Chu Yang. Then his family would also be safe and sound. But he still chose to jump out and fight head-on. And he came all the way to today. The greater the pressure he faced, the faster he rose. The frequency of his strength increasing also became faster and faster. Yao Ningning smiled. In summary, Chu Yang is such a person that can't be measured by common sense. Any pressure on him will become his help in the end. And those who make an enemy of him will also make an infinitely powerful enemy. Isn't Yuan Tianji like this now? I don't want to have an enemy that will make me unable to eat or sleep well in the future. So I don't want to see any obstruction to Chu Yang. Now that we're already friends, why bother to turn against each other? The heavenly imperial court is so vast. Can't I coexist peacefully with Chu Yang? Yao Ningning's words truly shocked both Hu and Ma. All this time, everyone who understood Yao Ningning had a common understanding, and that was that their great-grandfather was very stupid. How stupid was he? He had no brains, no opinions, and no shrewdness. In any case, he had none of the things that a normal person should have. But he had never thought that he would be able to say such thought-provoking words at this moment. How could they not be shocked? These words had a deep foundation. It was obvious that he had thought it through. It was definitely not something that an ordinary person could say. All these years, Mother's body is still as healthy as before. But her heart is already tired. She doesn't want to care about too many things anymore. I can naturally see this. But I still don't have the qualifications to be the emperor of a region. I still have this bit of self-awareness. So I can only muddle along and delay the day of my succession. Chu Yang is a person who values friendship greatly. As long as the other party gets his approval, they will be able to get his friendship. A friendship that lasts a lifetime. There is no need to worry about betrayal. If Chu Yang can really rise in the future and work with me from afar, with us brothers supporting each other, I may not be unable to take over Mother's heavy burden. This is also the biggest reason why I am willing to treat him with sincerity and treat him sincerely. Yao Ningning said, I respect Chu Yang and Tan Tan as brothers. This is definitely not a casual remark. It is out of sincerity. They themselves are also worthy of my respect. With them in Demon Emperor's heaven, it is actually not necessarily helping our Demon Emperor's heaven. It is definitely not weakening. So, on this point, I don't want you to do anything stupid and affect our hard-won friendship, Yao Ningning said. In the name of Demon Emperor's heaven's heir, this matter is settled. There is no need to discuss it in the future. The tone of his voice was actually very domineering. It faintly revealed the rare aura of a king. Hu and Ma had no choice but to sigh. They no longer talked about this matter. Uncle Ma said, I hope that Chu Yang and the others can understand my kind intentions. And they mustn't do anything ungrateful. If Master is implicated because of Master's trust, then it will be too much of a loss. If this really happens in the future, then I will take it that I am blind, Yao Ningning said. But I believe that I will definitely not be blind. At least not this time. On this day, Yao Ningning made the biggest bet of his life. Moreover, this gamble of fate would prove the wisdom of the monster race great emperor in the future. He won. In Luohua City, Chu Yang's heavenly armament pavilion officially took root and sprouted. And it was gradually growing stronger. Under Yao Ningning's great efforts and the tacit consent of Tang Clan's third young master, the entire Luohua City became east. The area of 700 miles around the Falling Flower Villa had become the headquarters of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Raging Blade Hall, Divine Sword Hall, Wanli Hall and Information Hall each occupied a large area. The Torture Hall was the smallest, and Wanli Hall the largest. All the recruitment started from Meng Wuya's Wanli Hall. After training and understanding, they were assigned to various halls. Tan Tan's Demon Hall didn't occupy any space. According to Great Demon King Tan's shameless words, the whole world is a demon hall. Wu Qianqian walked around the various halls at all times. She had the divine soul of Calamity and Brother Hu as her bodyguards. They followed her everywhere. With such a powerful bodyguard lineup, there was no need to exaggerate. Even if Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun, Yuan Tianjie, personally led an army, he wouldn't be able to touch Wu Qianqian for a while. Chu Yang, Tan Tan and Zi Xieching were overseeing Luohua City. Tai Butian's Heavenly Armament Pavilion's main hall was also here. It was also foolproof. Chu Yang was extremely busy at the moment. In fact, he was so busy that it felt as if his feet were hitting the back of his head. He had been urging the Sword Spirit to produce the improved version of the heavy pills in large batches over the past 10 days. The elixirs in the tribulation space that had matured and could be used had shrunk by half in these 10 days. Even the spring of life shrank by almost a third. The 3 elixir spirits were so distressed that they almost rebelled against Chu Yang. After the Sword Spirit dealt with all these without rest, he began to cultivate in seclusion to open up a new path for himself. In order to be quiet, and not to cause more trouble for Chu Yang, the Sword Spirit left the tribulation space silently. His whereabouts were unknown. This was the first time the Sword Spirit left the tribulation space for such a long time. Moreover, he didn't know when he could come back. He also didn't know if he could come back. While Chu Yang was disappointed, he also blessed the Sword Spirit. After all, a person's path had to be walked by himself. The Sword Spirit would take this step sooner or later. What Chu Yang could do was only to bless him, and to give the Sword Spirit something that he could use. The results of this were also very, very significant. Now, even Chu Yang, the Tribulation Sword Master, didn't know how many heavy pills he had. Anyway, he still had so much purple crystal jade essence. He took out almost half of it, and made bottles to store the improved version of heavy pills. As for the rest that couldn't be bottled, Chu Yang simply used it to make all nourishment soup. Just like when he trained those children in the Chu clan courtyard, he used it to strengthen the foundation of the current subordinates, and improve the foundation of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion from the root. These users were all adults, and the meridians in their bodies had already been fixed. Therefore, their progress was definitely far from that of the children. However, it was slowly, imperceptibly, and silently, little by little, subtle changes were taking place. Even if it was just a little bit of change, it was a great improvement for these people whose life achievements had already been fixed. Under Tai Butian's serious request, all the halls began to crazily train their soldiers. This was because the pavilion master Tai Butian had issued a strict order. Within half a year, all the people who were at the martial saint level must rush up to the heavenly human level. All the heavenly human level and above must be promoted to the saint level. All the heaven level people must rush to the saint level. All the earth level people, no more. The recruitment of the heavenly armament pavilion was very strict now. Without saint level cultivation, there was no way to enter the heavenly armament pavilion. Any hall. If they couldn't rush up, then sorry, the hall master would have to do a checkup in front of the whole heavenly armament pavilion in half a year. He would also have to slap himself and break one of his arms. This punishment was too heavy. As soon as such an order was issued, all the hall masters were so worried that their hair turned white overnight. Other things might be possible, but there was no other way except for hard work. The most miserable one was Meng Wuya. Other people only had a few hundred people at most. But he had already recruited 3,000 people at his place. Almost half of the saint-level experts in the Luohua city had joined the new heavenly armament pavilion. Meng Wuya looked at so many new recruits. Each of them was going to have a big upgrade. He was so anxious that his mouth was full of blisters. He made up his mind and increased the difficulty of all the training programs by 10 times. Then, the screams of the heavenly armament pavilion rose and fell one after another. It was endless and lingered for a long time. Under Meng Wuya's extreme training, a saint expert would basically reach their limit within an hour, and then break through it, and the cycle would repeat over and over again. Chapter 2208. No one wanted to lose an arm, and they didn't want to admit their incompetence in front of everyone. Slapping themselves in the face was a matter of dignity. I'm still a hall master, a feudal lord. Whoever dares to drag me down and embarrass me, I'll kill you. These people were basically the core members of Heavenly Armament Pavilion at this stage. Chu Yang knew that the future development of Heavenly Armament Pavilion would be decided by these people. Therefore, Chu Yang's current investment could only be described as sparing no expense. Every morning, a super heavy pill would be thrown into the big pot. After it was powdered, it would be quickly stirred to make sure that the powder was evenly distributed in the morning soup. Everyone would have a bowl. Those who didn't drink it would have to report to the torture hall. They would definitely be punished to the point of no return. Would they be punished so severely if they didn't drink the soup? Although this decision was very strange, everyone drank it. Some people who never drank the soup pinched their noses and drank it. No matter how uncomfortable it was, it couldn't be compared to the punishments in the torture hall. Under such nourishment, Chu Yang absolutely believed that there would be no difficulty for these people in Heavenly Armament Pavilion to advance by at least one level in half a year's time. However, only Chu Yang, Zi Xieching, Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian knew about this biggest secret. Even Meng Wuya, King Saber and Lightning Snake, who were at the level of hall masters, were completely unaware of it. If they knew about it, their enthusiasm would not be so strong. At least, they wouldn't train so hard. Minister Chu said with a sinister smile. Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian collectively admired Minister Chu's wisdom. They're training like crazy. With my medicine, the effect will be even greater. It'll be strange if they don't show results. Chu Yang smiled sinisterly. His face was full of complacency. Without any outsiders knowing, the era of Heavenly Armament Pavilion's collective cheating and drug abuse quietly arrived. The only side effect was that, at some point, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion had a new name that was universally acclaimed, Watering Soup Pavilion. After hearing this new name, Chu Yang and Tai Butian were speechless for a long time. There was nothing they could do to change the situation. As Heavenly Armament Pavilion settled in Luohua City, the outside of Heavenly Armament Pavilion quickly became prosperous. It was true that a big move would inevitably lead to rapid economic development. For a time, there were many shops outside with a dazzling lineup. The most bizarre thing was, that day, Chu Yang, Tan Tan, and the others accompanied Yao Ningning and the Tang clan's third young master to go out together. They saw a huge wheelbarrow outside. There were round ball-like things inserted into wooden sticks on it, and the wheelbarrow was moving around for sale. Yao Ningning was intrigued and asked curiously, "I say, what is this thing of yours?" "Steamed bun candy," the hawker replied proudly. Chu Yang and the others staggered, and almost fell to the ground. Then, they burst into laughter in unison as they looked at Tan Tan, the hall master of the Devil Hall. Chu Yang laughed out loud. "Steamed buns? Is this exclusive to Tan Tan?" Tan Tan's face turned black in an instant. However, he couldn't vent his anger on the peddler. His nostrils almost spurted out sparks as he strode away. Behind them, Yao Ningning and the others took out money one after another, and wantonly bought them. "Come, come, come! Quickly give me 2 buns of sweets. I want to taste what Tan Tan's Devil Hall tastes like. Give me 2 skewers too. 2 skewers aren't enough. I want 4 skewers, and me." For a moment, Luohua City's specialty sweets unexpectedly became popular. Even the soldiers of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion who were desperately training inside begged the outsiders, "Give me 2 buns of sweets. I also want to taste what Master Tan's Devil Hall tastes like." Luoyang paper was expensive, and Luohua candy was expensive. As a result, the peddlers suddenly and inexplicably made a fortune. "Our Heavenly Armament Pavilion has developed very fast recently." The Tang clan's third young master held a drumstick in one hand and chewed. Ever since the annoying disease was cured, the Tang clan's third young master's complexion improved day by day. He even put on weight. Moreover, there was a tendency for him to slowly develop horizontally. The hemp pole posture of the past was no longer seen. Moreover, with the sudden rise of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion and the few big shots of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion more or less had some relationship with the Tang clan's third young master. Therefore, the Tang clan's third young master was more concerned about the Heavenly Armament Pavilion than his own family business. People who didn't know him would think that the Tang clan's third young master was some kind of mastermind of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. However, this very subtle situation had inexplicably raised the Tang clan's third young master's status in the clan. Unexpectedly, his right to speak was getting heavier and heavier. This was an unintentional willow. Gradually, it even had a tendency to suppress the second young master and the eldest young master. This made the Tang clan's third young master, who had always thought that he had no hope, was somewhat surprised. It had to be said that a person's temperament and demeanor were closely related to their own status. The Tang clan's third young master, who held great power in his hands, had now become somewhat calm and dignified. His original appearance with the head of a rat and the body of a hemp pole had now inexplicably become a lot better looking. Therefore, the Tang clan's third young master, who had tasted the sweetness of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, had recently become even more diligent. "What do you want?" Tan Tan narrowed his eyes and said, "Look at your head of a rat, and your face of vulgarity when you speak. You definitely don't have any good intentions. You are wronging me." "I don't have any." The Tang clan's third young master cried out his innocence and said, "The matter is actually like this." It turned out that the Tang clan's population had become more and more prosperous with the development of the clan over the years. The original clan's residence was now somewhat full. The fundamental reason that limited the Tang clan's development was that the Tang clan's residence was located in the central area of Luohua City. It was almost as if every inch of land there was worth an inch of gold. To the west of it was the city lord's residence of Luohua City. That was the territory of the government. The surrounding area was also the property of the government, or the residence of the officials. Therefore, if the Tang clan wanted to develop, they could only develop in other directions. However, the current problem was that the east was now occupied by the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. If they blindly developed towards the north and south, it would inevitably become a long strip. It really didn't look good. Moreover, in such a location in the heart of the city, buying a large piece of land also required a huge amount of wealth. The Tang clan wanted to occupy the land, but they didn't want to pay for it. Therefore, in the past few days, the Tang clan had been discussing the matter of moving. They wanted to move the entire clan to the south of the city, and turn the entire southern part of the city into the new headquarters of the Tang clan. In this way, the relocation would also require a huge amount of money. Moreover, the relocation of the entire clan might not be less than the purchase of land. With the current financial resources of the Tang clan, it was beyond their ability. Only by selling out their current headquarters could they complete this strategic shift. The Tang clan was divided into two factions because of this relocation. One faction was in favor of moving to the north, while the other faction was in favor of moving to the south. But no matter whether it was moving to the south or the north, the relocation had become an urgent matter. The Tang clan's third young master came to Chu Yang this time with the purpose of selling the Tang clan's current territory to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion if Chu Yang agreed. Because the Heavenly Armament Pavilion was rich, very rich, very rich, very rich. The Tang clan's third young master was deeply touched by this point. Chu Yang's attitude of being rich and imposing was definitely not an act. Of course, Chu Yang was rich. Now, just in his tribulation dimension alone, there were tens of millions of purple cloud coins. Moreover, as long as Chu Yang was willing, he could casually take out something to auction. As long as he took out a certain amount of it, the wealth from the auction would be enough to multiply Chu Yang's current net worth by several times. It wouldn't be too difficult. But in the face of the Tang clan's third young master's request, Chu Yang was more or less in a dilemma. When Chu Yang chose to take over the entire east side, he also had the intention of making plans for himself. After all, there was such an excellent feng shui land below. Although his and Zi Xieching's fortune was no longer something that could be affected by feng shui, he could still make plans for the future by occupying this piece of land. Perhaps hundreds of thousands of years later, that place would form again, and there would be a lot of golden jade fluid. That would be a huge matter with far-reaching effects. But now that the Tang clan's third young master was taking the initiative to sell the headquarters of the Tang clan, Chu Yang felt that something was wrong. Zi Xieching said before that the Tang clan's feng shui was excellent. As long as the place where the stars gathered continued to exist, the Tang clan would never decline. But the prerequisite was that the Tang clan's headquarters must always be located here. Once the headquarters left, the fortune would no longer be there, because the feng shui would not follow you. Then, it would be hard to say whether the future would be a blessing or a curse. Third young master, I think that the Tang clan's move is a little inappropriate. Chu Yang thought for a while and decided not to take advantage of this. Recently, the Tang clan had helped a lot when they settled down in Luohua City. He couldn't just rob them of their feng shui, right? That would be too despicable. Although the Tang clan didn't know that there were treasures buried deep under their own home, Chu Yang knew that he wouldn't do such a thing. Inappropriate? What's inappropriate? The Tang clan's third young master was a little surprised by Chu Yang's reaction. You see, the Tang clan has settled down in Luohua City for hundreds of thousands of years, right? Chu Yang said lightly. All along, in the history of the Tang clan, there has never been any brilliant peerless experts. It seems that there hasn't even been any sage-level experts. But the Tang clan has settled down in Luohua City for hundreds of thousands of years. This in itself is an extremely rare miracle. Without top experts, the Tang clan has always been able to prosper. In a place like Heaven Imperial Court, where the strong are respected and the big fist is the law, this is an impossible miracle. Chu Yang said. But the Tang clan has done it. This shows that the Tang clan's feng shui is good, really good, and definitely not fake. So, I think that the Tang clan's relocation this time should be based on the premise that the Tang clan doesn't move the headquarters. Or you can build another Tang clan residence in another place, but it's better not to move the headquarters. Chu Yang said seriously. A clan is like a big tree. It can have no roots. The Tang clan's third young master was stunned for a while, and then he fell into deep thought. Chapter 2209. What I said must have some basis, Chu Yang said. The final decision is still in the hands of your clan. If you insist on moving, I can't do anything about it. But I won't buy it. But after you sell it to someone else, I will buy it from someone else. I don't want to destroy the feng shui lifeline of your clan. But if you really sell it, I won't watch the good feng shui fall into someone else's hands. I will buy it back. If I do that, I may have to spend a lot of money. But that money will buy my own peace of mind. Because all of this has nothing to do with me. Of course, I still have to seriously advise you not to sell it. Chu Yang's words had already hit the nail on the head. In fact, they were even very explicit. Tang Clan's third young master pondered and said, "This is no small matter. I will go back and discuss it with the clan elders." Chu Yang nodded. "That's right. If you choose not to move, I can help you if you don't have enough money to build the Tang Clan's courtyard." Tang Clan's third young master's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Brother Chu." He didn't wait for the meal to finish. He waved his hand and called the waiter to settle the bill. Then, he couldn't wait to go home. It seemed that Chu Yang's words had touched him a lot. "I say, senior brother, you aren't making fun of Tang Clan's third young master, right?" Tan Tan stared at Chu Yang with eyes full of suspicion. It seemed that Chu Yang rarely did such a righteous thing. He didn't have any tricks up his sleeves, right? "Get lost!" A certain king of hell who was being unreasonably suspected shouted angrily. "Go eat your sweet buns!" The words sweet buns were like a trump card. Tan Tan was stunned in an instant. On Chu Yang's side, he was still racing against time to intensify his training. Under such an atmosphere, Heavenly Armament Pavilion naturally grew stronger and stronger day by day. Such strength was difficult to conceal. The tyrannical strength of Heavenly Armament Pavilion was not unknown just because it had risen for a short period of time. On the contrary, its name was expanding day by day. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. However, other places were not as calm as here. For example, Mo Yuntian's entire world had turned into a lump of porridge, and it was the kind of porridge that was boiling. Yu Lai was heavily injured and could no longer bear it. The journey back home could not be bumpy. The entire journey took a full month before they returned to their hometown, Mo Yuntian. Mo Yun's vice commander Yu had returned in defeat. The shocking news of Meng Wuya betraying Mo Yuntian was like a bolt from the blue, shocking all the upper echelons of Mo Yuntian in a short time. Both the military and the government felt an unprecedented shock. The first reaction of all the higher-ups after receiving this news was disbelief. These two pieces of news were simply too absurd. At the time of the initial intelligence, Chu Yang was at best a small fry who had just ascended to the level of saint. How could he possibly defeat and even severely injure Yu Qi, who had already reached the level of saint? Also, he wanted Meng Wuya, who was also a saint, to surrender to him. Was this nonsense? However, the truth of the matter proved the veracity of these lies. As a result, the upper echelons were even more shocked. Especially the first point, it was truly a great shock. All the upper echelons of Mo Yuntian clearly realized the strength of this enemy, Chu Yang. Or perhaps, Chu Yang could no longer be described with the word strong. What kind of existence was Chu Yang to be able to make such a strong army like Yu Lai suffer heavy losses and return in defeat? Even to the extent of causing Yu Lai to be heavily injured and on the verge of death? The second point was because of Meng Wuya's betrayal. Almost all the discerning people recognized one thing: the rift between the two opposing factions in Mo Yuntian's military had finally turned into a chasm, moving from the dark to the surface, tearing off the last bit of concealment. The conflict between the two opposing factions in Mo Yuntian's military had finally reached the point of turning into a bare blade. This rupture was no longer avoidable. On one side was the eternal protector of Mo Yuntian, Marshal Mu Tianlan, the invincible military god of Mo Yuntian. On the other side was the trusted aide of Mo Yuntian, Vice Commander Yu Lai. Even before Yu Lai returned, the military generals between the two sides had already fallen into a state of mutual hostility, on the verge of fighting at any time. Everyone was watching this cautiously, and no one was willing to say a word. However, the scouts of the various major forces had already flown into the sky at the first moment. Emoyuntian immediately sent out Imperial guards to carry Yulai into the palace, inquiring about the reason for this trip in detail. It was precisely because of this matter that even Marshal Mu's request for an audience was ignored. Yu Qi's disheveled appearance and emotional outbursts caused Yuan Tianji to fly into a rage. Marshal Mu, who was waiting outside the palace, heard the Sky Emperor's angry roar filled with hatred. Marshal Mu's thoughts moved, and a wisp of his soul immediately left the palace and returned to the military camp. Immediately control all the chaos in the Dream Slayer army, then transfer Meng Wuya and the others' families immediately. It's extremely urgent. Quickly! Marshal Mu's soul only said this one sentence, then returned to the outside of the palace again, continuing to wait for Yuan Tianji's summons. This entire process only took the blink of an eye. As soon as the news of Meng Wuya's betrayal spread, Commander Mu had already sent people to protect Meng Wuya and the family members of his trusted subordinates. However, now that the evidence was irrefutable, the original protection force was no longer enough. Marshal Mu once again made a new response at the first moment. Almost at the same time when Marshal Mu's soul returned, he heard an angry roar in the palace. Mu Tianlan, what the hell are you doing? Come in! It was Emoyuntian's resentful voice. Mu Tianlan sighed in his heart. Under normal circumstances, the Sky Emperor would never call his name directly. However, once he did, it meant that the Sky Emperor was on the verge of exploding. Mu Tianlan walked in slowly, only to see Yulai half lying on a chair at this moment. Her face had regained its color, and her spirit was also vigorous. It was obvious that she was fine. After receiving the divine medicine from Emoyuntian, Yulai recovered very quickly. Lord Sky Emperor, Mu Tianlan greets you. Marshal Mu bowed slightly. Look at the good soldiers you brought. Yuan Tianji glared at Marshal Mu with a sinister expression. He was furious. Disregarding the grace of the Emperor, colluding with the enemy, ignoring the blood feud, ignoring my orders, turning a deaf ear to them. You actually betrayed us at the last minute and killed your fellow soldiers, causing tens of thousands of soldiers to be buried in a foreign land. Ignoring the blood feud. As Yuan Tianlan spoke, the anger in his eyes became more and more intense. It had turned into the darkest flames, as if it was going to burn everything. Lord Sky Emperor! Mu Tianlan took a deep breath and said loudly, how can this matter be concluded like this? From the beginning to the end, it was only Yulai's side of the story. How can you convict her? Meng Wuya had always been loyal to the Ink Cloud Heavenly Court. He had been at their beck and call for hundreds of thousands of years, and he had never changed his mind even in death. How could he lose his integrity in his old age when he was in a high position? Isn't this strange? Yulai on the side interjected. Marshal Mu's words are wrong and biased. If he didn't betray someone when he has a high position and power, what's the value of betraying when he's just a small soldier? Mu Tianlan was furious. Yulai, are you implying that every high-ranking official of the Heavenly Court may betray their homeland and defect to the enemy at the last minute? Yulai didn't show any weakness. She said in a deep voice. What I said, Marshal Mu should understand. Why are you beating around the bush? For a time, the two argued endlessly, and no one could suppress the other. You two, stop arguing. Yuan Tianjia shouted in a deep voice. First of all, when Meng Wuya first met Chu Yang was only a martial saint. Meng Wuya did not immediately take him down, leaving him room to develop. This is a great sin. Even with the power of a thunderbolt, he still couldn't destroy an ant. If there's nothing strange about it, Mu Tianlan, do you think it's possible? Secondly, Meng Wuya has always prided himself as a clear stream, and he has a lot to say about what he did. Now, it's not impossible for him to neglect his duty, be benevolent and sympathetic to the enemy, and even cover up for the enemy. This is the second. Thirdly, Yulai led the 80,000 Moyun army to descend at lightning speed, and before that, I didn't hesitate to mobilize heaven and reached an agreement with the Demon Empress. In the end, I still returned in defeat. As a heavenly emperor, the demon empress will not lie to me, and disdain to lie to me. Then, Chu Yang and the others can't really get the official help of the demon emperor heaven in demon emperor heaven. Since there's no external help, he's isolated and helpless. Then, he can still inflict heavy losses to the army, almost to the point of being completely wiped out. Then, other than Meng Wuya, who's familiar with my army, acting as a spy, or even betraying at the last minute, what other possibility is there? Mu Tianlan hurriedly said. Although what your majesty said is reasonable, this is still within the scope of speculation. There's no evidence. How can you convince everyone? Mu Tianlan, you're so bold. Yu Lai said coldly. General Mu, I've always respected your outstanding ability, and you're the #1 pillar of my Moyun Heaven's army. Everything in the army is handled by you in an orderly manner. Some things, even Lord Heavenly Emperor relies heavily on you. Even your cultivation is not much inferior to Lord Heavenly Emperor. But how can you speak to Lord Heavenly Emperor like this? Are you criticizing Lord Heavenly Emperor, or are you teaching Lord Heavenly Emperor how to do things? Are all these actions of yours the duty of a subject? Mu Tianlan flew into a rage. You lie, what do you mean by this? Over there, Heavenly Emperor Moyun's expression was already somewhat ugly. Yu Lai's words were full of flattery on the surface, but in reality, it was full of ambushes and traps. His words were all accusing Mu Tianlan of having a disloyal heart, and his intentions could be said to be extremely vicious. Chapter 22:10. The Lord of a Heaven, especially in a world like Heaven Imperial Court where the bigger fist was the bigger reason, no matter how magnanimous and broad-minded he was most afraid of his subjects having the ability to replace him. Even if the subjects didn't have to have this intention, as long as they had this ability, they had already committed suicide. Everything is under your control. This was equivalent to saying that Mu Tianlan could cover the sky with one hand and act arbitrarily. Lord Heavenly Emperor also relies heavily on you. This was obviously saying that Mu Tianlan's achievements were so great that even Lord Heavenly Emperor couldn't leave you. As for your cultivation, it's not inferior to Lord Heavenly Emperor. This was the most vicious curse. Mu Tianlan, you completely have the ability to usurp the throne. No matter which emperor heard these words, they wouldn't be indifferent. Not to mention that Yuan Tianji was already very dissatisfied with Mu Tianlan because of Yuan Shintu and Meng Wuya. At this moment, when he heard these words that added fuel to the fire, the anger in his heart only grew stronger. Right and wrong are already clear. There's no need to argue anymore. Yuan Tianji said coldly. General Mu! Although Mu Tianlan had a belly full of anger, Yuan Tianji's position was clear now. It was useless to argue anymore. He could only bow and accept the order. Lord Heavenly Emperor, please give your orders. I think that the Dream Army led by Meng Wuya no longer needs to exist. It can be cancelled. Yuan Tianji said lightly. Your Majesty, this can't be done. Mu Tianlan turned pale with fright. Under Meng Wuya's careful management, the Dream Army was united from top to bottom. It could be said that it was one of the few elite troops in Muanshin's army. And the number was quite large. The entire army had a total of 500,000 people. This was a powerful force that no person or force could ignore. How could they just cancel it like that? Although Mu Tianlan knew that he would offend Yuan Tianji even more if he continued to argue, this matter was important. He still tried his best to persuade him. However, Yuan Tianji said with a cynical face, even the general has betrayed us. Do we still need to keep this army? Do we have to wait until the day when the traitor Meng Wuya returns and the entire army goes over to surrender? Your Majesty is wise. You have penetrating insight and hit the nail on the head. Yu Qi cheered loudly. Your Majesty, please think twice about this. Mu Tianlan's face twitched painfully. There's no need to say any more. Jin's decision has already been made. This is the final conclusion. Yuan Tianji waved his hand and decisively decided on this matter. In addition, after the disbandment of the Dream Slayer army, all the soldiers and officers under the original organization will be strictly managed. Everyone must be included in the scope of inspection. Yuan Tianjie said coldly. Once you find anything wrong, immediately kill them and eliminate all possibilities of hidden dangers. As for the empty space after the Dream Slayer army was disbanded. When he said the words, Dream Slayer army, Yuan Tianjie's face had an expression of disgust that was hard to hide. Yu Qi will take on the heavy responsibility of expanding the army. Marshal Mu had been doing everything by himself these days, no matter how big or small, and he was tired. Therefore, Marshal Mu did not need to worry about this matter anymore. Mu Tianlan heaved a long sigh in her heart. This matter had already been decided. His side had weakened a main force of the Dream Slayer army, while Yu Qi's side had added a new elite army of 500,000. His Majesty the Sky Emperor's true thoughts were already clear as day. Yu Qi accepted the order loudly and excitedly, expressing her loyalty. In addition, immediately give the order to capture Meng Wuya's family members in Ink Cloud Sky. Also, the family members of those who betrayed with Meng Wuya are also on the list of arrest. This group of people is not small. If they cooperate in rebellion, it may cause considerable losses. Yuan Tianjie said coldly, and a trace of completely unconcealed killing intent flashed past his eyes. Yu Qi frowned and said, Your Majesty, Meng Wuya betrayed heaven, and his crime is unforgivable. However, his family members and the families of the soldiers under him may not have the intention to rebel. Moreover, these people all have good cultivation. In the future they may be of some use. Mu Tianlan glared at Yu Qi, so angry that her whole body trembled. This sentence seemed to be pleading on the surface, but in fact, it was reminding the Sky Emperor of Ink Cloud that they may not have the intention to rebel. Of course, they may also have the intention to rebel. Meng Wuya's family members were not ordinary people, and their cultivation was quite good. If they wanted to eliminate the root of the problem and eliminate the hidden danger, it would be better to be more resolute. Sure enough, the killing intent in Yuan Tianjie's eyes was even thicker. He said resolutely, The crime of rebellion is unforgivable. All the related personnel will be killed without mercy. Mu Tianlan only felt that his heart was hit by a 10,000 kilogram sledgehammer. Suddenly, there was a feeling of stars flying around. He struggled to open his mouth and said, Your Majesty. They don't know the inside story at all. They are all our Ink Cloud citizens. Your Majesty. Yuan Tianjie snorted. I've already made up my mind. There's no need to say more. Plop! Mu Tianlan knelt on the ground, touched the ground with his head, and said bitterly, Your Majesty, please take back your order. I'm willing to guarantee with my life that they have no intention to rebel. I ask your Majesty to be lenient and show mercy. This was the first time Mu Tianlan knelt down since he knelt to Yuan Tianjie 300,000 years ago. Seeing this scene, Yuan Tianjie obviously hesitated for a moment. Your Majesty, I'm also willing to guarantee with my life that they have no intention to rebel. Marshal Mu's words are reasonable. Yu Qi struggled and said, If they really disregard your Majesty's kindness in the future and rebel against this heaven, at that time, we will naturally put righteousness before family. We will definitely not be influenced by them and wallow in the mire. If they betrayed in the future, maybe Mu Tianlan would also rebel. This was the true meaning of Yu Qi's words. Mu Tianlan only felt that his blood was attacking his heart. He jumped up suddenly and slapped Yu Qi's face fiercely. Shameless villain with a honeyed mouth and a sword in the belly. Adding insult to injury, you really have a dirty and vicious heart. With a pa sound, Yu Qi rolled down from the chair. He spat out blood and exclaimed, Mu Tianlan, you actually dare to commit murder in public in front of His Majesty. You! Mu Tianlan strode forward. His eyes were blood-red and murderous. Today, I will kill you, you despicable villain, and return Moyun Sky to a clear sky. However, a figure flashed in front of him. Yuan Tianjie stood in front of Mu Tianlan indifferently and said lightly, Marshal Mu, what are you going to do? At this moment, hearing this cold, Marshal Mu was really like a basin of cold water poured over his head. Mu Tianlan suddenly felt weak all over. He staggered back a step and said, "I am guilty." Yuan Tianjie narrowed his eyes and stared at him for a long time. Then he said, "Since Marshal Mu and Marshal Yu vouch for this group of people at the same time, then I will spare them for the time being. However, they can be spared from death, but they can't escape punishment. Everyone will be thrown into the prison to see what happens next. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your grace." Mu Tianlan lowered his head sadly. "Yuqi, you made a promise just now. Since you promised to place righteousness above family, Jin will order you to supervise the prison. You must capture all the traitors and bring them to justice. If anyone escapes, Jin will punish you for neglecting your duty." Yuan Tianji said coldly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Yuqi agreed loudly. "Please rest assured, Your Majesty. I will definitely fulfill my duty and will not be influenced by anyone. I will not wrongly accuse a good person, nor will I let a traitor go. If there is a mistake, Your Majesty will punish me severely." Mu Tianlan suddenly closed his eyes. He only felt that his heart was cold. Every word of Yuqi's was directed at him. Did he have no chance to intervene in this matter anymore? If the soldiers of the Dream Slayer army and their families really fell into Yuqi's hands, how could they have a good ending? Mu Tianlan didn't believe that Meng Huiya would betray from the bottom of his heart. But now, Meng Huiya had become a traitor under Yuqi's trap. This was already decided, and it was also decided by Yuan Tianjie. It was the same for everyone else. The prisoners who were caught and thrown into the prison were directly put under Yuqi's control. Their ending was undoubtedly more miserable. Perhaps, His Majesty the Sky Emperor was warning him. Otherwise, Mo Yutian had officials in charge of criminal law. Why would he use a deputy marshal of the world's armed forces to directly manage a small prison? Even if the prisoners inside were important. But there was no need for this. It could be imagined that after this matter, Yuqi's authority would be astonishingly high, and he would gradually be alienated by His Majesty the Sky Emperor. His group of good brothers who followed him before would all suffer. And now, he could only give in. If he were to be enraged and take any action, then this group of people who treated him as their core would truly be faced with a calamity of annihilation. Mu Tianlan didn't even know how he got out of Mo Yintian's imperial palace. Mu Tianlan was in a daze. He looked up at the sky with his eyes closed. He only felt that his heart was dead. "Huiya, although I have tried my best to mediate, it is of no use. At present, I can only try my best to protect some of your families. As for protecting all of them, I am powerless. Moreover, even this small part may not be able to protect all of them." Mu Tianlan felt a sharp pain in his heart. Suddenly, a piece of coldness fell on his face. Then, there was a piece of coldness that penetrated his bones. In the distance, there was a child's voice cheering. "It's snowing! It's snowing!" Mu Tianlan suddenly opened his eyes and only saw countless white snowflakes falling from the sky. "This year's snow seems to come earlier than in previous years." Mu Tianlan stood bleakly in the snow and murmured. No one knew what he meant. Outside the palace, the military generals who were waiting for him came up and asked with concern, "General Mu, how is the situation? General Mu, what did His Majesty say? General Mu, how is old Meng? Is His Majesty willing to give him a way out?" Mu Tianlan looked up at the sky and sighed. He didn't say a word and walked in the flying snow with an inexplicable bleak expression. The generals behind him looked at each other, and their faces sank instantly. They were full of disappointment. One of them even cried out. Although no one could see any result from Mu Tianlan's face, there was no expression on his face, and he didn't say anything. But this already showed that Meng Huiya's name as a traitor had been confirmed, and there was no turning back. The Dream Slayer army was finished. Asking for the author's vote of the year. Chapter 22:11. I'm going to His Majesty. I'm going to ask His Majesty for an explanation. There's always a place for justice in this world. How can you dismiss an army so carelessly? This won't do. a bearded general shouted in grief and indignation. He suddenly turned around and ran toward the main gate of the palace. "Come back!" Mu Tianlan shouted. Then, he stretched out his hand and pulled the running general to his side. Mu Tianlan raised his hand and slapped the general's face. "Do you want another traitor to appear among us? Or will there be another corpse with the title of traitor?" Mu Tianlan's face was livid. When the generals heard this, they felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Marshal Mu's words implied that the current situation might be 1,000 times worse than the worst situation that they had imagined. "Mu Shui! Why? Why?" One of the generals, who was the closest to Meng Wuya, asked tearfully. "The rain is late." Marshal Mu gritted his teeth. His face was livid. He said each word in a low voice with a hateful tone. Then, he took large strides forward. His bleak figure was completely submerged in this sudden blizzard. This year's snowstorm had indeed come earlier than in previous years. What a heavy snowfall! The weather was cold enough. All the generals looked at Marshal Mu's back and felt a chill in their hearts. Outside Marshal Mu's camp, there were also many officers standing quietly in the snow, waiting. There were more of them, as many as thousands. These people were the officers of Meng Wuya's Dream Slayer army. All the generals above the rank of deputy general were here. They looked at Mu Tianlan and the others coming from afar. The muscles on Mu Tianlan's face twitched fiercely. He didn't say anything. He just looked deeply at the thousands of soldiers in front of him. He was speechless. He was too ashamed to face them. Facing these people's hopeful eyes, the people behind him all felt like their hearts were being cut by a knife. Without exception, they all lowered their heads. None of the thousands of people said a single word. They just looked at Mu Shui, hoping to get the answer they wanted to hear. However, they were all speechless. After a while, the flames of hope in the eyes of those officers were extinguished bit by bit, without the slightest bit of light. Mu Tianlan straightened his back and stood in front of the thousands of soldiers. He raised his face and closed his eyes. He didn't say a word. After a long time, he suddenly bowed deeply to the thousands of soldiers. He bowed to the ground. "Brothers, I'm sorry!" A long time after Mu Tianlan finished speaking, he was still standing there with his body bowed. All the generals behind him bowed to the ground. They didn't have the face to say any words of explanation. They could only use this action to show their helplessness. The thousands of people on the other side stood there in a daze. Every one of them was like a wooden statue. After a long time, everyone quietly moved their feet and opened up the path to the camp. Still, no one spoke. As the first person turned sideways and opened up the path behind him, everyone behind him quietly moved their feet and stood sideways. A straight path appeared in front of Mu Tianlan's bowed body. As these people moved slowly and silently, drops of hot tears quietly fell to the ground. They burned a hole in the thin layer of snowflakes that had just fallen, revealing the ground under the snowflakes. Then, thousands of people returned to silence and motionlessness. Their eyes were full of silence. Mu Tianlan still bowed and didn't make the slightest movement. The generals behind him also didn't move at all. Suddenly, an order came from the opposite side. "Salute! Kneel! Farewell, Marshal Mu! Kowtow! Stand up!" With the 5 majestic orders, thousands of people silently raised their hands, clenched their fists on the left side of their chests, and bowed to Mu Tianlan for the last time. Kneel down, thank, and bid farewell to Marshal Mu. Dong! Following an orderly dull thud, the entire earth trembled. The foreheads of thousands of hot-blooded men hit the snow hard at the same time, causing the snowflakes to swirl in the air. With the order of "Stand up," everyone stood up neatly. However, it was no longer silent. The next moment, the person at the front of the line quietly moved his feet and slowly walked out without looking back. Thousands of people all followed behind him and walked out silently. In the silvery white snowflakes, the black military uniforms of the Dream Slayer army were like a black torrent. "Take care!" Mu Tianlan straightened up. Everyone trembled with this sound, but no one stopped or looked back. "Everyone, try your best to protect your families. Mu Tianlan said softly. If you can't, send them to me. Thousands of men trembled again at the same time, but still, no one stopped, no one looked back, and no one made a sound. Not even a cough or a gasp. Thousands of people left quietly as if they had never been here. Only neat footprints were left on the ground. It was so dazzling in this place of first snow. As it grew larger, those footprints were also slowly covered. However, these soldiers who had sacrificed their lives for Mo would they also be annihilated by history? Mu Tianlan looked at the footprints that were gradually disappearing on the ground in a trance. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and laughed bitterly. Then, with a sound of wah, a big mouthful of blood spurted out without warning. It turned into a bloody mist and filled the sky. The people behind him surrounded him in panic. Mu Tianlan staggered and waved his hand. He said tiredly, I'm fine. But he felt a chill in his heart. Even if you want to reshuffle the military, even if the military's power is severely tilted, even if you are too cruel. You are too cruel! Mu Tianlan looked sadly in the direction of the imperial palace and sighed. In Mo, the situation suddenly changed overnight. The troops and horses under Yuqi's command took over all the important places inside and outside the imperial palace. The surrounding cities also responded one after another. Almost every city's gate was occupied and guarded by Yuqi's army. The army belonging to Commander Mu was ordered to guard the camp at the same time, and no one was allowed to go out. If anyone went out without permission, he would be punished as a traitor. Clan execution. Such an order was obviously biased. Everyone, especially the officials, quickly sensed that something unusual was going on. For a time, the people in Mo imperial city were in a panic. Everyone knew that the battle between the two highest commanders of the military ended with Deputy Commander Yuqi's complete victory and Mu Tianlan's complete defeat. This ending made everyone's jaws drop. Although the military was divided into factions, Mu Tianlan had always had complete control over the military forces. His troops and horses were almost all elites. In terms of numbers, if there were only 10 people in Mo military, then at least 7 people were on Mu Tianlan's side, and there were only 3 people on Yuqi's side. How could Mu Tianlan be defeated with such a disparity in strength? But the fact made everyone puzzled. The one who was defeated and completely at a disadvantage was exactly Mu Tianlan, who everyone thought was invincible. The forces belonging to Yuqi's side were all arrogant and in high spirits, galloping their horses and looking insufferably arrogant. On the other hand, the soldiers of Marshal Mu's army had gathered at the edge of the campsite, their eyes spitting fire as they watched their old rivals flaunt their prowess at close range. They just lay on the edge of the camp. Behind them, the officers shouted loudly to let everyone go back to their tents. But these soldiers, who had strict management and military discipline, turned a deaf ear to this order. Behind them, the people in the military law office moved out one after another, waving their whips and whipping the backs of these iron-blooded men. Blood and flesh flew. Every time the whip went down, the people who were whipped twitched violently. But even so, no one went back to their own camp. They were still lying on the fence, watching what was happening outside. Everyone's teeth were deeply biting into their lips. Blood was cold. In the end, the people in the law office hit themselves until tears streamed down their faces. They threw away the whips and simply squatted on the ground and cried. The people in the imperial city still didn't know what was going on, but they were also keenly aware of the unusual atmosphere. They closed their doors one by one, only peeking out from the cracks of the door occasionally. Everyone's heart was beating wildly, as if they were welcoming the end of the world. Such panic quickly spread from the imperial city to the outside, and several surrounding cities were quickly affected. Then, it was like a stone stirring up 1,000 waves. The whole Muyan sky was in chaos because of it. In the afternoon of this day, since lunch, countless soldiers and horses began to gather and mobilize. Yuqi began to take the next step. Countless doors were kicked open by the rude and unreasonable soldiers. Immediately after, strings of people were dragged out from inside. The people who were tied up had miserable expressions and their faces were filled with despair. If they walked a little slower, they would be whipped. Their cotton-padded clothes would be whipped, and the cotton wool would fly, and blood would slowly ooze out. One push, one stagger. Among these prisoners, there were some who were covered in wounds because they resisted with force but were subdued. There were also some who were only young children, some who were already white-haired and had one foot in the grave. There were also some who were young girls, and there were also some women. It could be seen that each of these people used to have a certain status, or lived like a prince all year round. But at this moment, they were all tied up and dragged to the prison. Chapter 22:12. Officers wearing the uniform of the Dream Slayer army kept jumping out to block their way. What kind of crime did I commit? What crime did my family commit? I fought a bloody battle in the Black Wind Gorge. I died in the Heaven Eye Mountain. I killed 300 enemies in the Soul-Locking River. I made contributions to the Heavenly Court. I shed blood for His Majesty. I made contributions and worked hard. I am not guilty. Let go of my family. Let go of my family. The Black Wind Gorge, the Heaven Eye Mountain, and the Soul-Locking River were the three most praiseworthy battles in Meng Huiya's life. Back then, when Mo Yuntian's forces rebelled, Meng Huiya led the army to battle. The three great battles established his invincible reputation in the military. He and the army he led forced all the opposing forces to a dead end. The name, Dream Slayer Army, was formed from then on. The Dream Slayer Army destroyed the dreams of all the rebels. However, these officers were unable to save their loved ones after their screams. Instead, they were treated even more cruelly. Whenever one of them questioned them, countless soldiers would swarm out and capture them. They would kick them to the ground and tie them up. Before they could tie them up, their faces were slapped so hard that it was unbearable to look at. There were also countless rods that hit him where the pain was the most intense. These iron-blooded soldiers, who had achieved great military exploits in the past, were dragged into the prison. Their arms or legs had long been smashed, and they were no longer in human form. These loyal and courageous soldiers only claimed that they were wrong, but none of them tried to resist with force. On the second day, the search and capture continued. The entire heavenly court of Mo Yun and the 30 big cities outside the imperial city were all carrying out the same thing. Meng Huiya had been through hundreds of battles and made countless contributions. The Dream Slayer army he led also rose in status. They moved their families from the remote areas to the most prosperous cities. This was an honor specially granted by the Heavenly Emperor of Mo Yun. It was an honor that everyone in the military was envious of. However, the situation had changed. This honor had become a death sentence with nowhere to run. The target was clear. As more and more people were arrested, the military was in a state of panic. Especially when they saw that some deputy generals, and even the vanguard of the main force were all killed and sent to prison, the officers on Mu Tianlan's side finally began to stir. He could only watch helplessly as his brother's family was captured and abused. He didn't even have the chance to try and save them. This kind of helplessness was definitely not something a normal person could endure. After the incident, Mu Tianlan had already knelt in front of the Moenshan imperial palace for 2 days and 2 nights, begging Yuan Tianjie to take back his order. Kneeling with him were almost all of Mo Yuntian's military pillars and upper echelons. Some officials even knelt down, hoping that their actions would give the Dream Slayer army a chance to survive. However, Yuan Tianjie didn't pay attention to these people's advice. At this moment, Yuan Tianjie and his beloved concubine were mourning their lost love in the mourning hall of the Tai Yuan Different Road. This concubine is Yuan Sheta's birth mother. He completely turned a deaf ear to the tsunami of pleading voices outside. "What is His Majesty doing?" a white-bearded old official asked angrily. "So many people are crying and begging. Can't His Majesty hear it? He's completely indifferent?" The others were stunned. No one knew why. The chief steward of the imperial palace had known Mu Tianlan for a long time and had some friendship. Seeing this situation, he felt really uncomfortable. He quietly came to General Mu and transmitted his voice. "General Mu, You don't have to kneel anymore. Even if you kneel, it's useless. His Majesty is now summoning the soul of His Highness. He's now in the morning hall and won't care about anything that happens here. As soon as this sentence came out, Mu Tianlan felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. With the support of his profound cultivation, even though he had been kneeling for 2 days, his knees were still flexible. However, this sudden sentence made his knees stiffen instantly, and he could barely move. For Yuan Shetu's accidental death, Yuan Tianjie hated Chu Yang the most. But now, other than Chu Yang, Yuan Tianjie hated Meng Wuya the most. At this moment, everyone was pleading for Meng Wuya outside, but Yuan Tianjie was summoning the soul of Yuan Shetu. Facing his beloved memorial tablet, Yuan Tianjie only became angrier. If it were any other time, there might be a chance to be lenient. But now, the more people pleaded for mercy, the more the Dream Slayer army would be pushed one step closer to death. It would only cause the opposite effect. And it wouldn't be of any use at all. Who came up with this bad idea for His Majesty? Summoning the soul? Summoning what soul? The Tai Yuan Shetu was killed by Chu Yang. His soul was scattered and his body and spirit were destroyed. What soul can he summon? Mu Tianlan's eyes were like a hawk's. Yuan Shetu died and there was a mourning hall. His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor said, "If Chu Yang doesn't die, the mourning hall won't be removed. He must use Chu Yang's head to pay tribute to his love that died in vain." It's Marshal Yu's suggestion. The Minister of Imperial Household was an old eunuch with a white face. He whispered, "Marshal Yu said that the Tai Yuan Shetu's soul might not be completely destroyed. If His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor can use his supreme martial arts to perform the Heaven 10 Earth soul-searching attack in the Great Mourning Hall, he might be able to summon the remnant soul of the Tai Yuan Shetu and return. And as long as there's a little remnant soul, it can be protected by the light of the Heavenly Emperor and enter the cycle of reincarnation. There'll still be a day when you reunite with your father." Mu Tianlan smashed his fist hard on the ground. This punch clearly didn't use any cultivation, but it still made a big hole in the solid ground that was as hard as star steel. Ridiculous! Mu Tianlan scolded angrily. The Heaven 10 Earth soul-searching technique did have such a mysterious technique. What Marshal Yu said did indeed exist. But the premise was that Yuan Shetu's death must be near. And the current situation was that Yuan Shetu died in the Eastern Royal Heaven. For Yuan Tianji, it was already too far away to do anything. It was impossible for him to turn the tide. What's more, the Tai Yuan Shetu had already been dead for more than half a year. Only now did he think of summoning the soul? Although it was still possible in theory, there was no chance at all in practice. Moreover, after confirming that Yuan Shetu's soul had been destroyed, Yuan Tianji had already tried to summon his soul once. That time, it was completely useless. In other words, Yuan Shetu's soul had truly been destroyed, and not even a bit of his soul was left. No matter how much he tried to summon his soul, it would only be a futile effort and completely useless. Is His Majesty really muddle-headed? Mu Tianlan's chest heaved up and down. His beard moved without wind. He was so anxious that he couldn't say anything. His Majesty's action is still out of love. Even though he knows it's impossible, he still has to try. Just in case. The Minister of Imperial Household sighed deeply. Mu Tianlan suddenly came to a realization. Marshal Yu didn't mention this matter at this time simply to summon the soul of the Tai Yuan Shetu. Instead, it completely blocked the path of pleading for mercy for the Dream Slayer army. As long as Yuan Shetu was in the mourning hall, Yuan Tianji's hatred would be infinitely magnified. He would even lose his rationality and the ability to make decisions. In this way, any words of pleading for Meng Wuya would sound like the tragic death of love in Yuan Tianji's ears. Every word of such pleading would stimulate the pain of loss in Yuan Tianji's heart. Every pleading would push the situation of Meng Wuya and the Dream Slayer army one step closer to an even more unbearable place. This thought was simply vicious to the extreme. However, Marshal Yu had grasped the thoughts of a parent. Although Yuan Tianji also knew that this method wouldn't work and that it would be in vain, he would still try his best to give it a try for peace of mind. What if there really was a chance? Mu Tianlan told everyone about this situation. Everyone looked up to the sky and sighed. Everyone stood up one after another. At this moment, the originally well-intentioned pleading had turned into adding insult to injury. However, if they didn't plead for mercy, would they just watch these loyal soldiers die unjustly in prison? Everyone looked at each other. They were all at their wits' end. Mu Tianlan took a few steps back and looked at a certain direction in the palace with a somewhat desolate expression. Over there was a faint smell of cigarette smoke. Ordinary people would not be able to detect it at such a distance, but Mu Tianlan could accurately sense it. There was the place where His Majesty the Celestial Emperor was summoning souls. The aura there was completely peaceful. There was no sign of fluctuation at all. Obviously, His Majesty's thoughts didn't move at all. He simply didn't care about how many officials of the country were kneeling and crying blood and pleading. Mu Tianlan looked at it deeply for a while. Finally, he straightened up and turned to leave. The heavy snow was still drifting in the air. Mu Tianlan's departing figure seemed to be carrying the heavy snow all over the sky. He didn't look back. He walked forward with unusual firmness. His footsteps became faster and faster. From beginning to end, he didn't say a word. As the others watched Marshal Mu leave, their faces were filled with grief and grief. What? Meng Hui's family can't be found. Also, the families of those trusted generals who had been with him had all gone missing? There's no harvest at all? Yuqi looked furiously at the face of the soldier who came to report the news. His face was unusually ferocious. He almost wanted to swallow the person in one bite. We really can't find them, the general said carefully in a low voice. It is said that they all moved away a month and a half ago. They all moved away a month and a half ago. Yuqi narrowed his eyes and then said, I see. You continue to search for the other core soldiers of the Dream Slayer army and their families, especially Meng Hui's trusted aides. As for those who have been confirmed to have left, I will deal with them personally. Yes. The officer saluted and walked out. Yuqi's calm face slowly turned gloomy, and there was a hint of danger. The next moment, he clapped his hands and said in a deep voice, Men! You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.